Good. Okay. With that, I will call the meeting of the Town of Essex Select Board for Monday, October 20th to order. First up, agenda additions or changes. Is there anything from staff?
None from staff.
Anything from the board? Seeing none, we don't have any additions to approve. Coming up next is our public to be heard. Before we get started, some rules of order for the meeting. Please silence your phones. For those online, please keep your microphones muted until recognized by the chair. Public to be heard is a time for members of the public to address the select board on items that are on the consent agenda or not on the regular agenda. The opportunity to speak to those items will come as we move through the agenda. For public to be heard, please be civil, please be brief. As a general rule, any comments longer than a few minutes represent a need to have a deeper conversation, either via email, meeting, or being added to a future agenda. Please keep this in mind as you're speaking. Refrain from side conversations. Please be respectful of staff and those members of the public who are speaking. And when called on by the chair, please state your name and residence for the record. So with that, we'll move along to public to be heard. If you're in the room, you can raise your physical hand. If you're online, there is a reactions excuse me, button in the lower center. From there, you will have the option to raise your virtual hand. So if anybody does have any comments, first I see Lorraine Zaloom. Lorraine, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Chair. At least get a heads up, and that the communications that come in to the relevant DRB applications also be updated as we go along, so that the DRB, the applicants, and the public can also kind of keep up to speed, because I think that would allow the public to send in concerns in a much more timely manner, as well as hopefully reduce staff workload. The other thing I would request is that we look at Public Works or whoever, housekeeping, look at please installing CO2 monitors. They're very inexpensive into our public meeting spaces, as it should also help reduce staff outs and volunteers from getting sick. I understand people are catching COVID, and it's a very simple tool that when it gets to a certain parts per million, I believe it is, you can just open a window because it'll dilute the air for you and it'll help staff outs. I bought one for under $100. They're pretty cheap. They're easy to install, and you can turn on an alarm that'll let you know. Just a good way, good low cost way to reduce some cost to the town. Also, if we could be brought up to speed, the public, on the amount of litigations our town has been experiencing over the last year, because I keep seeing executive sessions now for a number of them for the last couple months. And I'm just wondering, are they the same case, or are we seeing an increase in litigations? Just would like to be brought up to speed on that. And then also, if we could have a review of the regulations and the legal process for what DRB can approve for drives or service roads before an application for the builds have been heard by the DRB. Would love to understand that process better. Thanks.
Thanks, Lorraine. Apologies, I was just writing down some notes. And next is Ken. Go ahead.
There we go. Speaking of COVID, I've got it. So there you go. Lorraine's got a good point there. It is going around. Two things very quickly, Madam Chair. I want to just alert the Select Board that the Conservation and Trails Committee has tried to produce feedback for the committee handbook. At our last meeting, it was on the agenda along with approval of the Conservation Fund survey, which we just completed. The meeting had technical difficulties. We had to cancel it, and it is going to happen tomorrow over at the police station. So we will have that to you, and I apologize for the delay, just to keep you up to date.
Thanks, Ken. Any other public to be heard in the room? Come on out. Excuse me.
Hello, everyone. My name is Julian Ugeti from Bashaw Drive. Thanks again for hearing me out tonight. So, I'm here tonight concerning two claims made by the Select Board during the October 6th Select Board meeting 2 weeks ago that I believe are untrue and which I feel compelled to correct, given they were not addressed by the board in the moment, which I would appreciate seeing going forward. First, while discussing the proposed free speech resolution, one of the board members stated that the Constitution is written for American citizens. I want to bring attention to the fact that this is a serious misrepresentation of not only the Constitution, but of U.S. law more broadly. This is particularly concerning for me coming from a body entrusted with local governance. I would like to underscore that the Constitution and Bill of Rights guarantee fundamental protections to all persons within U.S. jurisdiction, not only citizens. This has been upheld by Supreme Court cases numerous times. While certain civic privileges, such as voting or holding elected office, are indeed reserved for citizens, core rights, including freedom of speech, peaceable assembly, and due process, the very rights violated which this resolution seeks to address extend to everyone: citizens, immigrants, international students, undocumented individuals, tourists, and the like. Secondly, I'm here to reiterate my support for the original wording.
And if, for the resolution, that is on the agenda, so we're going to get to that.
Okay.
So that
So-
should come up during that business item.
Okay. This is, I mentioned that just because it kind of all goes together, but there's one more thing that I would like to address. So, well, if it's all right to just finish this. The resolution was brought forth with clear language, reason, and purpose to address the real recent violations of rights in our community. And so citing specific examples in that document was purposeful and important. Rather than being, it is not divisive. Rather, it emphasizes the town's commitment to constitutional principles. And is the purpose of citing those examples is to ground it in the context of our present and urgent reality. Which brings me to the second point. The claim that I wanted to address, which was also made during that same meeting, was that some of the board members said that the board shouldn't bother taking this up because the board is not a political body, which is the thing that I wanted to address. I will accept that the board is, in theory, nonpartisan, but the claim that it is not political, I believe, is inaccurate. A select board, by definition, is a political body, elected to make policy decisions that reflect the town's values and protect its residents. So deflecting responsibility to take action under the guise of nonpartisan neutrality in itself is a political act, and doing so would allow partisanship to hide behind inaction rather than upholding the bipartisan principles upon which our democracy is built. So to strip the resolution of its specific context would weaken its message, reducing it to a vague gesture, when what is needed now is clarity and conviction. Symbolic though the resolution may be, symbolism is only powerful when its meaning is preserved and clear. And diluting that clarity with generic language absent of the context that necessitated it renders it performative at best, dismissive at worst, and misses the mark of its intended purpose. So I'm not asking you all to go above and beyond your responsibilities. I'm only asking that you meet this moment with the integrity and action required to uphold basic principles of our democracy and to call out and correct false statements when they are made. Sorry that was blended together.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Sue? And again, we will have a full conversation about the resolution when we come to that business item.
Sure.
Good evening. My name is Sue Getty. I live on Basha Drive. So 2 years ago, this town made a promise of a declaration of inclusion, which, by the way, is in the town plan, which is the most recent one in 2024. We said that Essex would be a community where everyone feels a sense of belonging, where equity and access guide every decision we make. That declaration was supposed to be our compass, not a plaque that we just dust off once a year. During the recent discussion about the proposed women's prison, I heard something that stopped me cold. A planning commission member said, and I quote, "If we got some solid indications that there will be a bus route, money towards our infrastructure, money towards our first responders, if we were given something for the community, I will feel okay with it. I will feel good about hosting it personally." I want us all to sit with that for a moment. Those words aren't just about budgets and logistics, they're about comfort. About whose comfort matters enough to justify someone else's confinement. That statement says, in essence, if we're given enough perks, we can feel good about prison. But inclusion isn't about feeling good. Inclusion is about who we are when doing the right thing doesn't come with perks. When comfort becomes the currency of our conscience, we have lost the meaning of inclusion. The women who would have filled that prison are not abstractions. They're daughters, mothers, survivors, many already marginalized by poverty, disability, or systemic bias. Their lives cannot be traded for bus routes or infrastructure upgrades. I'm asking this board and every department head to require annual education for all town officials and employees, training on equity, bias, and community impact. If the town already provides diversity, equity, and inclusion training for board members and staff, I would like to know more about what that education looks like, its frequency, the scope, and who facilitates it. And if it doesn't yet exist in a meaningful way, I urge that we make it a standard, because understanding how privilege and policy intersect isn't political. It's part of responsible leadership. If we're serious about a declaration of inclusion, then our work must go deeper than ramps and slogans, not as a political gesture, but as professional development. Because understanding privilege, history, and harm is part of responsible governance. Inclusion without reflection is decoration. Inclusion without accountability is integrity. So I ask again, whose comfort are we protecting and at whose expense? The moral health of this town depends on that answer. And just as a reminder, because it is the town slogan, nothing about us without us. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. Cheryl, I believe it's Cheryl Van Ups.
Hi, I'm sorry I am joining late. I was doing a home project. I want to follow up on what was just said. I want to speak as far as I want to bring up the topic ethics. I've been reading up on municipal governance and ethics, and I'm seeing how Vermont has an overwhelming need for training in the area of ethics. I saw that the Ethics Commission for the state was overwhelmed with issues from municipals. I listened to the witnesses on the Ethics Commission's website, had 3 public hearings. I listened to those witnesses speaking on that, and I am concerned as for how our governments are listening to, through items on agendas, they're listening to those who are more privileged, who are the wealthy landowners in this state, and they are not hearing from those who are less privileged, those who are disadvantaged in many, sorry. I myself am suffering from disabilities, so excuse me, because I am emotionally attached to the subject. I ask that the board seek out those voices who need to be heard, because you are not hearing from them. I'm going to end this here because I'm tearing up and I cannot communicate effectively in this condition. But I ask this at this point in time, because all of our governments are failing us, and you need to hear from us. And we are not being heard from the looks of what agenda items are listed. You're not hearing from those folks who you are supposed to be serving. Thank you.
Cheryl, would you mind if I followed up with you directly for a conversation?
Yes, and I'm Cheryl Van Epps from Essex Town, Vermont.
I don't see any other hands online. Irene, come on up.
Thank you, Irene Runner. Thrush Lane. This will play off the comfort comment I heard earlier. It's not our job to be comfortable as public servants. It's our job to look at the facts. Maybe some of you expressed a sigh of relief when you heard the outcome of the Planning Commission meeting last week. The news articles and reports that I saw were kind of short on details. If you were at the meeting, you know it was a little bit lean on process as well. Yeah, this was proposed 14 months ago, but it was a very different proposal. The state asked for zoning changes on 2 different plots of land, and their preferred site was off Susie Wilson Road. The ink was barely dry on the state's new request, which came to us on October 2nd, asking for just 1 zoning change and expressing the preferred site as one off of Route 117. Now this showed that the state was hearing us, because planning commissioners kept saying, we're not going to approve 2 sites. Please don't keep insisting on 2 sites. And the state did so. They changed their mind. They did their homework, and they changed their request. The public expressed concern that there were houses near the Susie Wilson site, and the town manager expressed over a year ago that there was no sewer access. Again, the state heard us. The facts about the meeting on October 9th. No map was pulled up to show the new site. But members of the audience were allowed to speculate that it was close to schools, very close, one person said, to playgrounds and schools. Actually, the site is 2.5 miles from the nearest school. But it's hard if you're considering a zoning change and there's no map shown. You end up basing your decision on feelings. One planning commissioner suggested the state wasn't giving enough to Essex. She couldn't recall what we were getting for this. Well, that's funny, because months ago in one of the planning commission packets, if not 2 of them, there was a list of the payments in lieu of taxes that the state was offering us, and it was about about $270,000 a year. Planning commissioners acknowledged at that meeting that there was no police report, no fire report, no business reports, and yet they made their decision anyway. Where was the staff in gathering the data they needed to make their decision on robust information? Fact is, the Department of Public Works actually had weighed in several months ago, talked about sewer allocation at the River Road site. The Economic Development Commission had weighed in months before, welcoming a new business, as the commission welcomes all new businesses to Essex because they're economic engines. And in fact, there's a declaration of inclusion that says we welcome everyone to Essex, but you would never know it because the Planning Commission didn't discuss any of those three documents. Frankly, was a lost opportunity, I think, to not negotiate with the state, to not continue to invite the state to meetings, to not try to get to yes, as a favorite book of mine is titled, Getting to Yes. For 14 months, I had the distinct feeling that we were all working somehow behind the scenes on getting to know, and that really disappoints me, knowing the conditions of the current women's correctional facility. The one in Essex would have been a replacement for that facility, not another facility, as we heard over and over and over again from people. It would have replaced the dilapidated place in which we dare to house our justice-involved women. I'm incredibly disappointed. You, as a select board, appoint those planning commission members and you have oversight of them. I hope you will watch that meeting carefully, and I hope you will consider, as you write your handbook for boards and commissions, a reminder that facts and not feelings are what we need to go on. Thank you.
Thanks, Irene. Any other public comments? Yes.
Joe G. Garten, Chelsea Road. Just wanted to follow up with Ms. Renner's comments. I was at that meeting also, and I had not been to any meeting before the development board at all. I just came there that night. And it was just this is anecdotal, my distinct impression that they were starting with no right from the start. There was not any, let's see if we can try to make this work. It was just simply no. And I know, I think Ms. Renner just commented, well, how do we get the yes on this? And the board didn't entertain the idea of how we get to yes. And I just think that was again, as Ms. Renner said, it's a lost opportunity. So my gut feeling is, don't know anybody on the board. In fact, I said, I don't know what's in your hearts, but it looks to me like, you're just trying to find a way to say no. So thought you should hear that.
Thanks, Joe. Without seeing any other hands, we will move forward to the consent agenda. Andy.
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ethan. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0, bringing us to our business items of the evening. First up, presentation, discussion about Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission's annual report. With us this evening is Mr. Charlie Baker.
Thank you. Thank you for the time on your agenda. I believe you got the report in your packet. Looking at Greg. Okay. I assume, but I should never do that. So this is really a customer service check-in call. So every fall I try to get to the select board meetings all around the county. I'll review the report briefly, and happy to take questions or comments. Any feedback are definitely welcome. The first page of the report gives you some background on the Regional Planning Commission, the makeup of our board, how we leverage municipal dues to bring state and federal dollars into the region. This last year was almost a 13-to-1 return on that investment. And also at the bottom of the first page, thank you to your representatives on our board. Andy and Tracy, thank you for being on our board and being active. And then the other members on our other advisory committees, thank you to all of them. Appreciate it. And then the second page is really where we review specific things that we did with the town last fiscal year. Thank you, whoever's tracking that. But I'm not going to review each one of these in detail, but work on your stormwater system, Lower Sand Hill Road truck traffic study, active transportation plan. We talked about the regional plan and the future land use map that we just, actually, our board just voted last week to send it to the state for the initial review. Brownfields and some other technical assistance efforts, but happy to take any either questions or feedback on any of those services, or if you have any, and if not, that's okay too.
Questions?
All right, I'll roll. In this current year, you have 3 projects. A couple of them are continuing from last fiscal year. The transportation plan update we mentioned, impact fees will follow that, I'm sure, and then helping a little bit with the Northern Border Regional Commission grant administration. So happy to do that. And at the bottom of the 3rd page, you'll see a number of projects that are in our transportation improvement program that are mirrored in the state's capital transportation program, culverts, some stormwater projects, Susie Wilson. Some of these have been scheduled in the state's capital program, and others have not yet been scheduled, and that rolls over onto the top of the page 4. You have quite a number of projects. I would be remiss not to let you know, I think hopefully you've seen V-Trans starting to have some financial difficulties. They reduced some staffing. I think they are concerned about having enough local match to bring in all the federal dollars. And I saw some email traffic today indicating things are likely to slow down in terms of V-Trans getting projects through their capital program. So just a heads up there. I don't know exactly what it means yet. We'll know more when the governor presents his budget to the legislature in January, but I think that's a long way of saying if there's a date listed here, don't take that to the bank. So for better or worse. And then the last 2 or 3 pages are a bunch of different regional activities that we undertook without regard to any specific town. I mentioned the regional plan, a lot of different community engagement on that. Actually, it's not noted here, but the conversation you had, I believe you guys are aware that we just did a board member handbook. If that would be of any help, or if our staff can be of any help as you guys are working on your efforts, happy to do that. Housing convenings, we have another housing convening on the 30th. Is that the Wednesday? No, the 29th of this month, which will be virtual. Energy planning work, a lot of different kinds of transportation work, clean water work, some emergency management, a little bit of broadband work, but happy to take any feedback on any of those or questions, if there's any questions for you.
Shannon, I thought I saw your...
Yeah, I had a quick question about the culvert projects. Are those purely what's listed on here as replacement, or I know that there's been some talk about possibly widening those, making passes underneath, things like that. I know it says it's in the design phase. I'm curious what exactly that means.
Yeah, I don't know a lot of specifics, but typically, I'll just say generally when you see culvert upgrade, it's typically they are kind of right sizing the culvert. Lots of times the need to replace it is driven by the fact that it's undersized, and so it's backing water up behind it. So typically, I don't know if your public works staff might have more detail than I do on that, but let me know if you want me to. Would you like some more detail on that?
I'd love some personally. I don't know if you need to send to everybody, but
yeah,
definitely interested.
Andy?
Maybe just connecting you with the V-Trans engineer working out.
And one little piece I can share is that the one on Route 15 where we're going to put a multi-use path across that's being taken into account, the fact that they need to add more space for the path that we just approved last week or at the last meeting.
Yeah, I remember they talked about it last week.
So they're
Great.
So yeah.
Good? Any other Andy?
I attended the ANR's Municipal Day last Friday, and the entire LURB was there. I attended a session on Act 181 and the Tier 1 and Tier 1A and Tier 1B. And during the discussion or during the questions about that, I mentioned that Essex had opted out of requesting Tier 1B. And I was approached after the meeting by someone who has close ties to the legislature, saying that the word that they are getting is that the legislature is not happy that some communities are opting out, and that they're considering the possibility of removing the incentives that come with state designations from those communities. Is that anything that you know anything about?
Not specifically. It's not surprising to me. I guess I would question. I mean, we'll see where the legislature actually lands. It doesn't totally surprise me if some, one or a couple legislators might be voicing those kinds of opinions, but I'm not sure. I don't have any sense yet that the legislature themselves will come to that kind of place, and particularly because this process is so new. I mean, we don't really know how it's going to work. We're really just trying to do the mapping and the community engagement work right now, and so I don't know. I wouldn't expect that to happen anytime soon, but I've been wrong before. So.
And we've been told that it's an 8-year cycle before we can reconsider whether to opt in or not.
Yeah,
so.
This is another issue, and I think my staff may have even been saying that when they've been working with your planning commission probably over the last few months, because the statute right now doesn't really have any process for in between those 8-year plan update cycles. It's something that we're bringing to the attention of legislators that, if a community was to change their mind in either direction, we need some way to bring that back to the LURB to update the map. And there isn't really no process for that to happen right now. So that is an issue that we've flagged. And when I say we, I mean the RPCs across the state have flagged that as an issue that we hope does get addressed in the legislature, so that there is a process that would allow communities to have some flexibility in between those 8-year periods. And just real quickly, and I guess you probably voted on that sometime in the last few months. We, as the Regional Planning Commission board, will not be voting on the final version to send to the state, the Land Use Review Board, for final approval, probably until April or May. Okay. So there is, in theory, probably the next 5-6 months, there is a possibility if a town wanted to reconsider. I think we had Colchester also. I don't know that they voted no, but they did not make a yes decision. So we have had a few towns that have not opted in. So there's a few months also right now for that to be further discussed if desired.
Okay. So the version that went to the state is not the final version.
Exactly.
Potential.
Yeah, this was literally, they call it the pre-application. So they don't even consider it an application yet. We're kind of getting preliminary feedback before we prepare a formal application in the spring.
So presumably with the legislature reconvening in January, we may get some more clarity on what ramifications there may be, if there are any, for not opting.
Yeah, I don't know that we'll have the clarity in January, but
no, and I mean before April, May, or maybe not.
It's
even
possible.
Then,
I think at least by that time we would know if there's legislation that's moving, in either direction.
Okay.
In one to make the process more flexible, or hopefully not to be punitive. I will say, when I did talk to the initial sponsor of the legislation, who was a rep at the time, now Senator Bongartz, and not to quote him or anything, but when I kind of asked this question some number of months ago, might have been when they were in session last spring, and I was like, are you thinking about any consequences? And from his standpoint, he was like, listen, there are going to be towns that opt in, towns that opt out. Those that opt in may have more development and bigger increases in their grand list, and those that don't won't. So he was much more, even about it. So I don't know if that's helpful at all. but just to counterbalance.
Right,
what,
right. Yeah, the word NIMBY was used, and more expensive housing in your town if you opt out. That's the kind of language that I was hearing from supposedly from legislators.
Yep. Not totally surprising.
Okay.
I could speculate, but I won't.
Yeah. Okay.
And Andy, you started your first question with an acronym. For those who aren't fluent in state acronyms, LURB. Charlie used the full phrase, but it's the Land Use Review Board.
Yep.
Just in case anyone was
said ANR,
curious.
which is Agency of Natural Resources.
Yes, thank you.
NIMBY is not in my backyard.
I was wondering what that one was. Like, I never heard that one.
It's not in my backyard. Yeah.
It's more of a mindset than an organization.
All right. Thanks, Charlie.
Any other questions for Charlie? Jenna?
I don't know. I don't want to give my other members a chance.
Go ahead. I'll ask after.
So one of the things that stuck out in the report, and I appreciate you putting this together, was the discussion or the topic of public transportation planning. As you're probably aware, GMT is having some financial burdens to overcome, and we're watching as our services are not increasing, but our dues are. As a regional planner, can you tell us anything that you might be able to help us with in this planning topic?
Short answer, no. We provide about 600,000 and sometimes more than that to GMT for transit planning. That's like 600,000 of federal funds. Partly your dues or contributions to GMT go to 20% to match that. So they do have, and that's been increasing the last couple of years as they've been under more pressure. I think maybe going back 2 years, it was only 400,000. So we've done a significant increase in that, which is, I think, allowing them, and they should speak to it, but I'll throw a little bit out there on the table of, to my understanding, that they are increasing their planning staff to be able to better address issues. I believe Clayton Clark did send out an update to the managers. I don't know how widely spread that has gotten, with a little more optimistic tone, probably from the state, the sense that the state is going to help bridge the gap for FY27. But then it also says, but FY28 still looks pretty bad. And they are looking at the whole assessment formula. So there's quite a bit to work out kind of on the administrative financial side. And then, you get back to the services. I think they are starting to figure out how to structure services more efficiently. I think the tone of that message that I read was kind of like, we've kind of reduced all the inefficient routes, and now we're really, back to the core routes. So I'm hoping it doesn't go further. And I don't know if there's, going to be more discussion about different funding mechanisms and reliance on town contributions and the property tax. I think that's the other part of the conversation that is likely to come up at the legislature.
Thank you.
Kendall?
I find it very concerning that the transportation budget at the state is being reduced so much. And I just wondered if you as a municipality had a lot of clout to make any changes to that, or if you need more buy-in from towns or such to impact that?
Yeah. I don't think it's that the transportation budget is actually being reduced. My sense is that they're not getting as much money in the gas tax as they have historically, as cars become more efficient. I know they've made some moves, and I'm not an expert on this, to like we have more EVs. They obviously don't pay any gas tax. So I think they've been increasing registration fees to try to make up for that on EVs. It's a little bit, I don't think the legislature is trying to reduce the transportation budget, just to be clear. I think it's that the revenues coming in from the different taxes that fund and fees that fund the state transportation trust fund are not keeping up with the costs of projects. If that's a little bit more helpful context, and I think because costs have been going up so fast in the construction world, for every dollar they're just able to get less projects done, and so that's my sense of what's going on. It's not, I don't know that the money is actually less. It's just that they're able to get less built for the same dollar.
Okay. And thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. Sorry if I was confusing earlier. I apologize for that.
Good.
I was just gonna say, if I could be mistaken on the date. It could be the 1st of January, but I'm pretty sure it was July 1st, 25 that the first change went into effect, and they have like I think it's a 3 or 5 year plan for increase on the EVs because because of the paving, a lot of implications with paving, public transit, it all wraps together. But there's a method of make a change, see how it impacts, and then it's going to be fluent for the next couple of years.
Yeah,
So-
and I'll be curious to see if the governor's recommending. I mean, he's been, very no tax increase, no fee increases, but I'm wondering if this might be an area where, they do start to look at some changes to, particularly if we're leaving federal dollars on the table. And I'm not sure that is the situation.
Right.
But when I first was here, I was like, geez, I hope that doesn't happen, that we're not able to bring, get raised to 20% to bring in 80% to the state. Would be not a good situation.
With no other board questions, I'll turn it over for questions or comments from members of the public. I do see Lorraine, your hand is up.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question and clarification. Did Mr. Baker say that if there's dates on the plan for the projects they're not hard dates anymore? Am I understanding that right?
I'm not sure what I said that sounded exactly like that.
There was
about the
some
regional
funding concerns, so don't hold the dates that are within your report, that those may change.
The dates for the transportation. Yeah, there's the scheduled transportation projects. So there's, just for clarification, there's some of these projects that say, like the culvert upgrades, it's construction scheduled to begin in 2028.
Right.
I'm not sure it's really going to be 2028. If they have funding constraints, they may push it out longer. So that's what I think I was referencing.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify because I remember I spoke to one of the project managers about one of the 117 projects at the North Wellston Road 117 intersection. And he assured me that was a couple months ago that the funding was there and it was going to happen in 2028. So I just wasn't sure who's right. Thanks.
I'm not 100% certain either. I'm just I think I was just trying to raise a little bit of doubt about the dates if they will stick. And just historically, that's really not an unusual situation for VTrans to change the schedule. Sometimes they move out, sometimes they move up, as they're taking, as things happen out with the project. Sometimes it gets hung up at permitting. You never know. So just a grain of salt there.
Thanks, Charlie. Thanks, Lorraine. Ethan.
Yeah, just to add to that too, some of these projects are already done. Like there's almost done the stormwater 128 to Essex to Fairfax is paved. I think there was a culvert that was replaced. And then also just for informational purposes, I'm not sure exactly when the meeting was or the quickest way to find it, but we had a meeting with VTrans, I think it was in the spring, where they came and presented to us all of the projects that were approved for funding. And then there was like a list of 7 to 15 projects that were approved projects that had plans, but they had no funding secured for them. So there is some things that were set in stone to be completed, and then there was a large list of things that weren't, so we can try to pull back some info from that meeting and maybe throw it in the next meeting or something.
My staff, coordinates with VTrans all the time on this, because we have to, the RPC board needs to approve these projects in the TIP in order for VTrans to have access to federal funds. So these, like the point you just made about there's some things that are on the list, but they haven't been scheduled, and that on this list that I presented you, it says scheduled to be determined. So they're probably the same projects. So hopefully we're pretty well lined up.
Andy.
The Regional Planning Commission meets monthly, and at nearly every meeting there's an amendment to the project list. So it is definitely not, when you say set in stone, those stones are not as solid as they might appear to be. So yeah, there's, like I said, there's amendments made to it every month, and there's always a good reason for doing so.
reminder.
Thank you, Andy.
Cheryl, go ahead.
Hi, Cheryl. Town. I was a person who was medically restricted from driving for a period of time, and I needed transportation. What I was going to recommend is we need to understand the needs of Essex Town's people for transportation when we discuss the impacts of changing the bus routes and such. It we are not taking into account the actual needs, the level of need, versus usage, because I do not use the buses nearly as often as I would or could, because the infrequency of it coming around. I have to walk 45 minutes to get to the nearest stop. So adding that on top of the time it takes me to be transported to the area, that takes a lot of time out of my day. So because the buses do not come frequently, I do not use them. So I want you folks to understand that that you may, if you had frequent trips, frequent whatever arrivals at the bus stops, then you may see an uptick in riders because of that, because the convenience. So I want to get that across, because I do not think our government folks understand that that's a barrier for us to ride. I'd almost rather walk, you know, knowing that I don't have to run the final blocks to get there on time to catch that bus, because I can't run. So I'd rather just walk the whole entire distance. So just please take that into consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
All right. Yep, right.
Not seeing any other hands, so you are dismissed, Charlie.
Okay, sorry. Didn't mean to run before you said it.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is presentation and discussion about Town Meeting TV's annual report for fiscal 25. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Thank you. Nice to see you all. My name's Jordan Mitchell, and I'm the operations director for Town Meeting TV. And then joining on Zoom is Megan O'Rourke, who is CCTV's executive director. So as mentioned, we are here to request contributions as part of the town's FY27 budget, and provide an overview of how those funds were used in our last fiscal year, which is FY26. And just to confirm, Megan is on Zoom somewhere. Great. So give a little backstory about who we are. So you see us here every meeting as we're here recording the meetings. But CCTV, Center for Media and Democracy, houses 3 projects: Town Meeting TV, CCTV Archives, and CCTV Productions. CCTV Productions is our fee for service organization that sometimes will do, event coverage, conferences, documentary work, things like that. And that's kind of one of the arms that supports the rest of CCTV. There's also CCTV Archives, which is the collection of all of our archives dating back to 1984. Everything becomes a part of our archives, including these meetings. And then CCTV is the cable access station, which covers Burlington, South Burlington, Essex, Essex Junction, Williston, Winooski, and Colchester. So services and coverage through Town Meeting TV are allocated based on cable subscriber numbers through what is referred to as the contract. Town Meeting TV provides gavel-to-gavel or non-edited municipal meeting and community event coverage. We also, though, do media education with members of the community in our studio. And we assist in the community in learning other media education and, using cameras and other resources to create their own cultural programming. We also have internship opportunities for members of the public. We're located in Burlington, but it's for anyone in our coverage area. So we submit the report that's in your packet on page 21 as a part of the briefing to the Select Board on what our operations are, and as well as requesting for inclusion in your annual budget, and to hear from you and how we might better serve your needs. So last fiscal year, we produced and supported 1,600 programs for all of our municipalities, and 350 of those programs was municipal meeting coverage. For Essex, the contract with the trustees stipulates coverage of 3 meetings a month and at least 1 general program per month. And last year we had 39 Select Board, Planning Commission, and DRB meetings. I realized in your packet I left out the DRB, but that was included in the number for 39 meetings. Outside of those municipal meetings, you might have seen us out and about the community. Last year we covered the May Day rally against Amazon, the Essex Memorial Day service and parade, and the 4th annual Town of Essex Community Day Festival. And that's kind of just scratching the surface of our coverage. And if you feel that there are other events happening in the community that you don't see us at, and you're encouraged to reach out and let us know, one way to do that is through the Essex trustee, which is Dawn. She couldn't be here tonight, but she says hello. And then with municipal meetings, if there is a interest to have what would then be CCTV productions, provide hybrid meeting support for additional meetings, you could have a conversation with us about that. And we've talked with Greg and Karen a little bit about what that might look like if that was an interest. So to talk a little bit about funding, Town Meeting TV is funded in large part by cable subscribers of Comcast and Burlington Telecom for Burlington. Municipal contributions, such as what we're requesting tonight, is what helps to meet the increased demand for services, but the decline in cable revenue. CCTV, we continue to try to diversify our revenue sources since we've known that cable revenue for Town Meeting TV, or for cable, generally has been declining. It declined 9% last year. And so other ways we diversify our revenue are through fundraising, grant development, fee-for-service work, and advocacy. So for example, Town Meeting TV is a member of VAN, the Vermont Access Network, which is the 23 public access centers across Vermont. We've worked with the legislature. So this past legislative session, VAN as a whole received $1.35 million in base funding as a grant through the Secretary of State's office that started last year. We'll be working with the Secretary of State's office to increase that to $2 million by FY28. There was a potential question about, other ways we could make up for the decline in cable revenue, thinking about internet. And so that's something we've, looked into as we recognize, it's the same work for, less people on cable, more people moving to internet, same service, same wires. And that's something that VAN is looking at generally, not necessarily internet, but there would potentially a different type of tax, whether that be a streaming tax or a pole attachment tax. So VAN is looking at that, probably not for this legislative session, but for the future legislative session. Kind of to close, unless there's anything Megan wants to add, our staff are at these meetings to help make these hybrid meetings run. So I want to thank Logan, who's here off to the side, for his contribution and for public engagement and helping cover these meetings. So the work can't be done without our staff that are here alongside you. So thank you. If Megan, there's anything you want to add, but otherwise I would welcome any questions or comments.
Thanks. My name is Megan Rourke. I am the Executive Director of CCTV, and I just thank Jordan for a fantastic presentation, and I am here to answer any questions if need be. But as Jordan said, we really want to hear from you how we might better serve the community. Thanks.
We'll bring it to the board for questions, but just a plug for the great staff you have. Logan's great. He's always helping.
Gonna comment, Logan rocks. Give him a raise. I think we get a really good value for what we spend with you guys.
Shannon?
I, of course, wanted to praise Logan, but I think we've covered that. I also wanted to, Dawn did send an email, which the town manager forwarded to the staff or the board members before the meeting. It sounds like last year we used a few more slots than we were guaranteed. I think you said we're guaranteed 3 a month. We had 36 for the year, and she said we used 39. When we need to use extras, whether that's because we have an emergency meeting or something comes up, what is the process for that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a couple options. So sometimes, I see here y'all have an owl, so you are able to kind of have a hybrid meeting without us. So there's the potential that the town records the meeting and sends us the recording, and we'll air that instead. So that's one way that we're covering it, but not quite, fully here in the room. So it can be recorded, or having us come and record that extra meeting is fee for hire through CCTV Productions. So is how so Town Meeting TV, you get the 36 a year, and if there's additional, it's through CCTV Productions.
Great. My second question is more picking your brain. Last meeting we had a long discussion about our minutes and making sure that, as you mentioned, it's important Vermont has the availability to all and it's accessible. We've talked about, there's been any suggestions you had about utilizing the resources of Vermont CCTV. I know your archives, you said there's a different branch that's about the archives and different things, or could you speak more to that?
Yeah, CCTV wears many different hats, and one of those hats is the archives, which holds municipal meetings and community events dating back to 1984. Most of it is contributed from Town Meeting TV, but there's also other stuff. The community could submit stuff into our archives if they had not quite home video, but maybe they recorded an old Essex parade or something, and they wanted to submit it to us. I think your question about minutes, and I think it was brought up, could there be where we put the time in our recordings, like the time of day, instead of just, like, for example, if you go on our website or on YouTube, not live because it's happening live, but the next day we add in, like, the time codes that the meeting started, but that's not based on the time of day, it's based on the time of the meeting. So instead, this meeting normally starts at 6:30, but maybe it started at 6:33, and then 10 minutes later was the Town Meeting TV presentation, so like you can, in the YouTube description, jump ahead to 10 minutes later when Town Meeting TV speaks, but that's not, accurately for the minutes reflecting like the exact time of day. So that's, something we could definitely look into, how we can, because we do, titles, which you see up here. We have the lower third follows the agenda item, of course, Essex Selectboard, the date, but what else could we add to it? And adding a clock, could be an example, like the time of day, to help more accurately capture, more in the recording is definitely something we could look into.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other board questions? Seeing none, I'll open it up for public comment questions. Lorraine, go ahead.
Sorry, I have a lot of questions tonight. Would the Town Meeting TV ever be interested in looking at raising more revenue for their services by providing searchable transcription services?
That's a good question, and it possibly. It's interesting. So, like, our meetings are on YouTube, and YouTube already auto-generates captions to a fairly accurate way in English, and I think as well as other languages. So it is partially a resource that's already there for free, so we wouldn't want to, take advantage of that. But YouTube also is, AI generated captions and only so accurate. Maybe it doesn't know how to spell some of your names or certain roads that might be mentioned and things like that. So that, there is the potential. That's definitely something we've been asked before, especially if we've done different type of work to transcribe and, proofread and check for accuracy. So that could be a potential way. So thank you.
And I will add that we do pay for a transcription service that is more accurate and is teachable. And we are in the process of building a new website, and it will be something that we will have to do a capital campaign around to add transcripts to that website. So we have that. You're thinking strategically, Lorraine, and we are right there with you.
Perfect, thank you. Come on forward.
Carrie Lotzbaum, 22B Foster Road. Wouldn't adding subtitles, a clock to the subtitles be just like 3 mouse clicks? I do videography, so it seems like not overly. Maybe with what your setup is, maybe it's more, but just.
Yeah, it was brought up a couple weeks ago, and I did start to bring it to our field staff, and we use a platform called OBS for streaming, and you can add different plugins and change the layout. So it is something that we would likely be able to add relatively straightforward if we chose to go in that direction. So if if that sounds like it would also be helpful to to the public, that's good to know.
Yeah. Thank you. Seeing no other hands, bring it back to the board. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, Jordan, thank you.
Great, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Next on our agenda, discussion potential action about resident traffic safety concerns, requests for speed bumps on Tanglewood Drive and Glenwood Drive. Hi, Aaron.
Hello. I can kick this one off. So as you see in your packet, we have some residents from Tanglewood Drive. Courtney Thomas, who I believe looks like she's on Zoom tonight. There she is. Made a request that we look into putting speed bumps on Tanglewood and Glenwood. Ms. Thomas and her family have offered up their home in front of their home as one location. I believe they have a neighbor on Glenwood who's also open to this. Staff pulled some research, and Aaron can probably speak better than I can to the history and the technical aspects of it. Speeding has been a concern in Tanglewood for years. We've heard it from residents for years. Certainly it's an issue out there. The challenge from staff perspective is that as we've gone through and tried to put in different implementations and speed calming measures throughout the years, it's often met with pushback. So there seems to be a fair number of residents in the neighborhood, at least historically, who want to see some speed calming measures put into place, and then there's a fair number who don't want any of those put into place. So that's the challenge that staff has faced as far as trying to do or not do anything. I think we're certainly open to trying different implementation methods, but would like to get at least a majority and a decent majority of neighborhoods or residents affected by it in the neighborhood to be on board. So that's the overview from staff. Happy to answer questions as they might come up. And it looks like you have some residents here as well, at least one, who can probably speak to what it's like in the neighborhood as well.
Aaron, did you want to add anything, or?
Other than I know there was some question or concern regarding the project that we did have approved by the select board to kind of give a history, a timeline for this project. This was an improved scoping report that we did through the CCRPC. It was titled Tanglewood Drive Stormwater Pedestrian Improvement Study. We applied for a grant through the CCRPC back in 2018 for scoping study of drainage and pedestrian access along Tanglewood Drive. There were a number of public meetings back in 2019 and 2020. This was brought before the select board back in September of 21, which the select board did approve the preferred alternative of alternative 5, which consisted of some pavement rehabilitation, some slip lining of existing storm lines in the area, some significant stormwater outfall work off of Fern Hollow, painting of a fog line along Tanglewood Drive, and the addition of a speed table somewhere east or west of the Fern Hollow intersection on Tanglewood Drive. We have done the slip lining out of our operations budget. That is checked off that list. We did do some painting of a fog line along the entire length of Tanglewood Drive. And we have tried a couple times back in 22 and 23 to put in some temporary speed bumps along that cross section, and we did get a significant amount of pushback from some of the residents. A lot of times it was usually people that were fronting where we were putting these speed bumps. They didn't really care for the location. But we're restricted on where we can put these based off of site distances from from intersections, driveways, curves. So we're limited to where we can actually put these, not just able to stick them in front of someone's front yard. We're very much open to working with the public out there, figuring out what's the best fit. I think we should probably prioritize doing a couple test beds again, some locations out there, and if we can, and we can site them properly in front of some of the addresses that have kind of offered up their front yards, we're more than happy to work with the residents and see about installing those next spring.
Questions from the board? Discussion? Shannon?
I guess I'm just going to be the chatty Cathy tonight. Aaron, I appreciate that, and I appreciated the history that was included in the packet. Obviously, this is something that's come up quite a bit. It looks like there's a long history here. I'm curious from your take about the pros and cons of a stop sign. I know there was some comments in there that said, hey, it's a cheaper option. It doesn't create the noise. I know some people were against the speed bumps or the speed tables because of the noise, and there was some people with special needs in the neighborhood that were not benefiting from that. Why would a stop sign not be a viable option here?
Well, there's requirements in METCD, Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, that and a certain amount of traffic at these intersections that would mandate a stop sign. We haven't done the full study for that whole corridor, but we would have to take that into consideration, and we just can't place a stop sign at an intersection or at one of the side roads just because to stop Tanglewood Drive traffic. The side streets do have stop signs now, obviously, to allow for proper movement of Tanglewood, but for those intersections, I don't know that it meets the warrants. We could look into that further to make sure that we're not seeing something or haven't seen something in the past.
The follow-up question, I appreciate that. I know the study that was done, you said in 2021 or something like 2019, that time frame, also looked into, it sounds like a lot of water paths and different things like that. What would a new study do besides obviously looking at, containing speed and the adverse effects of possible solutions?
A new study focused on transportation is what you're
Yeah,
saying?
could we just focus on that? How much would something like that ballpark cost?
Off the top of my head, 15.
Okay.
20. We normally like to go for grant funding when we go after some of these speeds, like stuff that we can't do in-house. We will go after the grant funding through CCRPC or other sources to try to help us offset some of these costs. Something at this scale, we might be able to get away with working through our operations budget to fund such a study.
I think it was either Greg or maybe you brought it up about wanting to have, maybe it was the chairwoman herself, about involvement from the neighborhood and making sure there were public meetings.
Yes.
I'm assuming this is not the first time in the history of Essex that we've had a resident come forward and request speed implementation to make sure that something occurred. Is there a clear order of events that needs to happen to make sure that there's public warning of meetings and plenty of involvement? I know you're not ever going to get 100% consensus from a neighborhood. No. Is there a tipping point in which it would make sense? What are you looking for from getting out of such a public meeting?
In your packet, you saw that in the past, what we've used, we kind of had a number of roughly 75% of buy-in from the residents within that neighborhood. Most recently, we've had requests for either speed studies, more control devices, rapid flashing beacon crosswalks. You've seen some of those implemented this summer. Most recently, we've had one on Ethan Allen Drive over in 40th and Allen, where one resident got just about all the buy-in along Ethan Allen Drive from all the residents that live along there for a speed bump. We'll likely be meeting with them and investigating installing a temporary one on Ethan Allen Drive next spring. What we have an issue with, we don't have a policy. What I have an issue with, we don't have a policy of guidelines and basically boxes to check off for each of these requests. It's something that I know that Essex PD has been working with the team in the city, their planning and development, to come up with a policy for some of this work on how we go about it, how we rank these requests. And I think it's something we should seriously look into, and I believe we mentioned that in this memo here tonight, that we would like to work with PD this winter to kind of come up with our own policy here that fits our town infrastructure versus what the city has done with some of their bump outs and whatnot. So,
great, thank you.
Other questions? Kendall?
I would just note that it's my understanding that the speed bumps that are most effective are the ones that are actually part of the pavement, where they're specifically engineered so that a car going the proper speed limit can go across them without interruption. I know that they put temporary speed bumps in places that don't meet those standards that end up being worse than with no speed bumps. So I just, is there any opposition to pavement speed bumps?
Other than cost?
Other than cost?
Yeah, they're more cost prohibitive. When you install them, you're kind of married to them at that point, other than if you want to go back and grind them out.
Yeah.
But I think the benefit of using the temporary speed bumps, although they're a bit abrupt, because I'm sure all of you have driven over some of these in some of our commercial areas, either in Williston or South Burlington or whatever. They do jar you away. You know, if you hit one, you know you hit something. But I think it's just going to give us a good idea of where there probably would be more effective within that cross section, within Tanglewood Drive or Ethan Allen Drive, where we have the request. And then once we find that location to optimize it, we're put it part of our paving program for the following year or that year, and put in these.
So kind of like a try it before you buy it situation.
And whether or not they're an actual bump or a speed table, there is a slight difference.
Andy?
It's not, from what's been said here, it's not clear to me what the ask from staff is. The recommendation in the memo is to consider whether to have additional public engagement about this, but I'm hearing from Aaron that he says he's ready to go ahead and try some of these speed bumps somewhere. So I'm not sure what we're trying to move toward here.
Sure, and apologies if they, for the memo not being clear. Our staff is open to something. The challenge, I think, has been, is the neighborhood open to something?
Right.
I know parts of the neighborhood are open to something, some members are. Is there enough of the neighborhood who agrees on moving forward? So I think that was more the question for you tonight of, do you want us to move forward with trying to communicate and get feedback from the neighborhood? And if so, what are you happy with? Well, is there an amount that you're looking for? I think that Shannon asked. Are we looking for 75% buy-in, 70% buy-in, some other number? Because I think, as Aaron mentioned, the bumps can get expensive if they become permanent, and I think there's a lot more work to be done before presenting a more formal plan. But the question tonight is more, do you want us to move ahead with investigating it?
Andy?
So to continue on that, this neighborhood has 2 HOAs. Rather than use town staff to do the public engagement, could we not ask the HOAs to get a consensus from the neighborhood as to how they want to go forward. So that we're not, you know, we've been through this, but we've already approved, and it's the alternative way to look at this is we've already approved a preferred option, and if Aaron's ready to go ahead and give that a try in the spring, I don't think we need more public engagement, because we've already theoretically had that and approved something. I mean, our approval hasn't expired, but I think if we're more concerned about people coming in, people move in, people move out. There's or different things may have changed since then. And is it appropriate to use town staff to come up with a consensus, or should we ask the HOAs to do the work that they're supposed to do and come back with an answer for us?
It's an interesting thought, but I would think that the HOAs would be involved with their own residents and be able to pull folks together for a community conversation, since they should know everyone who is there. But I also like the comment that we did already approve a plan.
My preference would be to go ahead and go forward with some sort of evaluation in the spring and deal with the fallout from that, if there is any, or the happy customers, because we've already approved a preferred option, and just go, let's go do it, rather than turning back around and saying, are we sure we want to do this? If we want to turn around and ask if we are sure we want to do this, I think we should go and ask the HOAs, and saying that they have an HOA, which is Homeowners Association. My neighborhood has a homeowners association which hasn't met probably 15 years. So just because it's in your deed that you have to have one does not mean you have an active HOA.
True.
And so you can't just say that, well, they must already have had this discussion, because they may not have met. You have to have dues, you have to have officers, there's administrative stuff that needs to happen in the neighborhood to keep an HOA active and viable. And so asking them to do it may require them to reconstitute an inactive HOA.
Fair point.
So it's asking them to do work rather than having us do the work.
Mm-hmm.
That's where I'm there. My preferred option would be to go and do what we've already approved.
Aaron, quick question. For understanding that for the temporary speed bumps, you would pick those up sometime before plowing season starts. What's the date by which you would generally do that?
Pick them up before, probably we would shoot for like a November 1st, kind of like that's our don't work in the right of way cutoff date, to just kind of keep things simple for us. And then we pick them back up April 15th.
Okay.
Or put them back out, excuse me.
Kendall?
I just wanted to point out that there was a very good procedure outlined in the staff memo about distributing surveys, attending a meeting, discussing options, and stuff like that, and that the Public Works and Police Department plan to spend time winter formalizing a policy, which we don't have right now, as far as when we would pursue specific traffic calming measures, of which there are many, in any given neighborhood. And the city of Essex Junction is updating their policy right now, which was included, which would be a good blueprint. So, not to go against the board, but I think that might be a better approach, rather than just saying go install some speed bumps, temporary or otherwise. Just my opinion.
So you're offering to wait, do the study, do some outreach, and
yes,
ordinance
as specified in the memo.
Since they wouldn't be placed until April anyhow.
Are there any speed bumps in Essex currently?
Andy reminded me of one, and it's over on Peacham Lane. Peacham? Yeah, Peacham. It's right next to, it's over by the Essex Alliance Church. That intersection with
go down
Osage,
behind
that cut through to the cul-de-sac.
So there is precedent.
Forgot about that one. Ethan, did you?
I did too.
Yeah, I got a couple questions, points that I wanted to bring up, and the first I'm gonna start with is a question for Aaron. But when Public Works sets out our traffic recorders, are we getting time slots on those hits on speeds?
Yeah.
Okay, is that something that's regularly recorded and used for data analyzation?
Always.
Okay, because my counter to this conversation, and I'm with Andy on the speed bump part of it, where it's approved. We should stick to the approval. But this is the third location in the last 3 years. Just to name three is Osgood Hill Road. There was a car over 80 miles an hour. We're now seeing 60 miles an hour in a residential neighborhood. And I believe we saw 72 on Towers Road. Was that right? Right around there. So my question is, the simple, most effective method of this speed issue is patrol, right? And I'm not seeing patrol logs in these reports. So if we don't have time windows on the speed from these vehicles, we're not patrolling during those time windows when the offenses are occurring, because it's usually a repeat offender, like Osgood Hill Road, 9:30 p.m. every night, a diesel truck decides to go 50, 60 miles an hour up the road. It's been reported over and over. Towers Road, there's continuous reports about vehicle descriptions, certain drivers. The patrolling isn't happening. So while I do understand and respect the idea of putting in a speed bump as a physical barrier, why aren't we patrolling our roads at times of inflicted speed and traffic? And why is that data being left out in all of these? I understand that the number of vehicles, the fastest speed, all of those things, distances from roads is being included, but we're not including time zones, potential repeat offenders, and lastly, the most effective method that we have, which is taxpayer funded fully to this day, is patrol. I just got to raise the point.
So Aaron, just because I don't know, but when you get that traffic data, is there any analysis done to identify if there is like an event that happens consistently?
Usually when it flags those speed events like that, it will trigger and will flag date and times, and if it sees anything that kind of is a pattern, it'll flag it as well. We do communicate with PD if we find something that's like off the wall. I've seen upwards of like over 80 miles an hour on Brigham Hill Road, which I don't know how you do that. But that communication we do have, Ethan, with PD. The report that we get is like this from the data for putting out a counter for a week. This is like the background data that we would end up with that has all those dates and times of those specific events of when a traffic or when a vehicle is logged going by. So we do have the backup data, but we rely on our software to kind of parse through all that data to flag those events. And they are shared with PD if we do see something that sticks out that's significant.
Can have a.
No, I knew all of that. I'm happy with that. I just wanted to raise the point that patrol and a CNN would fix a lot of these problems.
Thanks, Ethan. Any other questions, or if we want to actually give some direction in the form of a motion, would that be your?
There's public comment.
A lot of hands raised.
Yeah, but that would be your preferred direction
Yeah,
when
that
it
would
comes
help.
back to the board.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
So we'll move over to public comment. First hand I see is Sharon Zukowski.
Hi there. I just wanted to clear something up. I don't know if it matters in your motion or not. Is somebody mentioned consulting the HOAs in that neighborhood? I think there's probably about 10 HOAs, but they haven't been active since the 70s. And I think there's another one that's active, and that would only be about 10, 12 homes. So I don't think that's going to work to do the survey. And the other thing I was wondering that Ethan mentioned about patrolling, they just changed the law in Vermont that you can give tickets virtually with one of those machines that records license plates. I don't think we have one, but I remember someone at another meeting mentioned that that's illegal, but it now is legal in Vermont.
I think
Thank
it depends on the purpose of what you're monitoring, but we can have that.
Yeah, it's a new
conversation.
statute that because we just don't have enough police, so they passed a new statute that you can place something and ticket people for speeding.
Andy.
Sharon, I'm sorry to correct you, but the statute was for a pilot project at construction zones on the interstate.
Oh, thanks.
And so that it was only for interstate travel in construction zones, just as a trial to try to figure out what rules would need to go around it. And to date, the problem that has arisen is that someone has to review all of the instances, and no police organization has stepped forward with the manpower to actually do it.
Thanks. So it's the same problem.
It was supposed to start July 1st of this year, and probably 3 or 4 weeks ago, there was a news story, VT Digger, about the fact that the expectation was that the state police would pick it up, and they said it's going to take 100 hours a week to review all of the input that those devices would collect, and they were unwilling to put up the 2.5 people that it would take to do that. So
thank you.
It's currently in limbo, has not even started. So.
And you don't have to apologize for correcting me. I like the right information to be out. Thanks.
Thanks, Sharon.
Take care.
Next I see is Betsy Dunn. Betsy, if you're speaking, you're on mute.
I was just trying to find my audio. That's all. Thank you. Thank you for having me speak. Yes, we have one HOA, the one that was found to be an HOA. No one knew it was there mostly. That's on Rosewood Trail and on the tail end of Tanglewood. I don't think there's another one that's there. When this happened on the Tanglewood and Rosewood Trails HOA, I went in the neighborhood and asked some of the older residents, and they said, "Oh no, we got rid of that HOA. We didn't want it." So I don't think they're there, but we have a thing that Annie from the Public Works, we could put together an outlet email to everyone and say, we're going to have a meeting, and we could have the meeting inside, maybe at the fire department. They've got a nice meeting room there. So that we could talk about this. I think that it would be a mistake to put in the bumps without the neighborhood being aware. I think you'd get a lot of nasty pushback. Thank you.
David A.
Hi, thanks for having this meeting. I apologize for my voice. I'm a resident in the neighborhood, and I've advocated in the past for
name for the minutes.
Sure. David Olofsson, 7 Tanglewood. I've advocated for speed measures in the past, and I've been in the neighborhood since 2009, and certainly the safety is absolutely an issue. I have young children, and many of the people in the neighborhood have young children. Just as a recent event, saw someone's dog get hit by a driver going way too fast on our street, not paying attention. I appreciate the comment about having more patrol as an option, but it's in the current state of things, it's just not super viable to expect to be able to hire more police to patrol a road like Tanglewood. I also know that we have police on the highway, and they pull people over for speeding all the time, and yet people keep speeding because they know that there's a chance they won't get caught. But I'm pretty sure if you put speed bumps on 89, people would slow right down. So I just want to say that we've been through this ask. We know that it's been talked about over and over again. And I don't think we want to be reactionary to someone actually getting hurt or dying in this neighborhood. The road is very wide, and people take liberty with that, and they drive very quickly. And I believe the last time we did a speed study in the neighborhood that the device was placed relatively close to the front of Tanglewood. And at that point, some of our friends in the neighborhood are just getting up to speed. So by the time they take the corner and head towards the back of the neighborhood, they could be going pretty quickly. So I would really advocate for any actual progress in terms of putting something on the road to slow people down. And I can say that I know more than a few people in the neighborhood that would be happy to spend a few days collecting some signatures and going door to door if getting information is what you need. But I really think that we should err on the side of safety here for this neighborhood and for the kids here. And I would love to see something happen soon.
Thanks, David. Courtney Thomas.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for taking this up again. I appreciate that. I heard a couple things that I just wanted to address. One, that I heard a lot about the buy-in of the neighborhood, which I can appreciate, and getting pushback, but I do wonder what in terms of safety, like, does that matter that much anymore? Like, we have a lot of information. You have some anecdotal information from me and my neighbors. You have the speed studies saying that it's a problem. I personally don't like speed bumps either, but I also love my children being alive. So I'm just wondering about that part, like how much, even if you get 50% buy-in from the neighborhood, does that mean that we don't do anything? And what does that mean for our community, I guess? Our Tanglewood Drive and Birchwood Manor is it's definitely a neighborhood in transition. We have a lot of young kids biking to school now. And it's lovely, and it's a great community, and it's also kind of terrifying that they might get run over. And it's also kind of terrifying to think that this is year 6 that we're talking about this. And I appreciate the slow grassroots movement, and I appreciate having a community meeting like Betsy was saying. But I think if I could get one point across, it would be that action's needed now. We can't be kicking this down the road any longer. Somebody's going to get hurt. After it was my dog that got hit by a car right outside our yard while my kids were biking around, and there was about 15 people in the road. So, I mean, I don't know how the person missed it. I think they were just being reckless. But yeah, I guess my point is just that something needs to be done. We don't need to be reactionary. We need to be proactive. And to the point of that we're going to get nasty pushback, I understand. You know, I also make my kids wear a bike helmet and I get nasty pushback, but sometimes that just outweighs the bad, you know? And that's, I guess, all I have right now.
Thanks, Courtney. Is there any public comment in the room?
Hi, my name's Brian Clifford. I also live on Tanglewood Drive. I actually live right across the street from Dave, who just spoke, and a few houses down from Courtney. Yeah, we all have kids around the same age, and especially with us and the Lofsons, like our kids are always going back and forth across the street to hang out with each other. There's a lot of biking that happens and other kind of, activities that kids tend to do, and we do see a lot of cars driving really fast down the road. I think the speed bump plan sounds like a good one. I know that, like, if you look at 6, 7, and 8 Tanglewood Drive, I think we would all support it. So if we just dropped a temporary speed bump down there, I would be cool with that. And if anybody has a problem with it, they can come talk to me about how their suspension is more valuable than our kids. Thanks.
Thank you. Allison, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Allison Millar Barlow. I live at 12 Rosewood Trail. So I'm further in this neighborhood, and I happen to be like at the end of a dead end road. We don't have a ton of traffic going right in front of our house. Still, we use the streets in our neighborhood, and we care about our neighbors, all these families we are friends with. And so we support putting speed bumps in. And I do want to reiterate what Courtney was saying, that this is a public safety matter. This should be a decision made by the town. Take into account whatever data you need to take into account. But this shouldn't be, sort of a vote amongst folks in our neighborhood. If this was a private road, an HOA maintained road, it would be different, but this is a public town road. So thank you for paying attention to this for us.
Not seeing any hands up in the room, no other hands up online, so we'll bring it back to the board. Any further discussion, or Andy?
I think there's already been an approved alternative, and I think we should just let that stand. And I think that there could be a definite benefit to letting the neighborhood know that this is going to happen, rather than just having them appear one day. If that's I think that's probably the right thing to do, but I don't think we need a motion. I think we already have that's it.
Shannon.
I appreciate that, and my question would be to Aaron. Yeah, looking at alternative 5, I believe is what you called it, that was passed. The last clause in that first sentence is that a speed table would be installed east or west of the intersection of Tanglewood Drive and Fern Hollow Road. What is the status of that project? I know that, as we heard from one of our previous speakers, things take a long time with transportation. As one of the Miss Thomas just mentioned, it's been 6 years.
So that project was a scoping project. In order to be eligible for state funding or federal funding, the process is scoping, preliminary, and then final design construction. This scoping project was approved by the board for a preferred alternative. That said, at that point, we started investigating, options for the layout of speed bumps and/or speed tables within Tanglewood. We did a lot of mailers. As I said, we investigated in 22, 23. Got a lot of pushback from residents. That said, in order to kind of at least push other portions of that project, the stormwater portion, we did slip line all the storm lines along that corridor. The Rosewood Trail outfall and reconfiguration at that point was more of a phosphorus control project. Public Works opted to let's finish out our flow restoration projects, which is the LDS Church on Essex Way, and then we can kind of sit back, prioritize our phosphorus control plan, pick out the projects. That project on Fern Hollow, I think, gives us about 10% of our state load or of our lake load. So that's one project we'll be investigating in the near future to implement. But as for the speed table, that portion of this scoping project was facilitated. We went into this project having basically pedestrian access on one side of the road or the other, and a stormwater project. That speed table was a genesis of some of the public meetings and public outreach as part of the scoping plan. So at this point, we're kind of here, figuring out where we want to go from here. Obviously, there is a concern out there by some of the residents we need to address. And memo, we're looking for direction from the board on where we want to go at this point.
Ethan?
Yeah, I was going to ask kind of a clarifying question there too about the numbers, but let's just say that the whole project was approved, but then stormwater pipes collapsed on Tanglewood and we had to fix them. So can another portion of that project, the $440,000, can we take out just the speed bump, or do we need to line the road also in order to put the speed bump in? Is there any regulation on that, or can we just put a speed bump in with an unlined road?
No, the scoping plan is just a scoping plan. It's just kind of a process for final design of a project out there. The town could choose where to go. They can only use portion of it, design portion of it. Public Works opted to try to be proactive and start attacking some of the low-hanging fruit on that approved project, or that scoping project. The speed table, like I said, we did try to throw out a couple test areas and saw significant pushback. So we kind of wanted to regroup and figure out how best to attack this problem. But will likely go push forward on the, like I said, the Fern Hollow portion of that project, which are the outfalls, and the reconstruction of some of the outlet infrastructure for that community onto Fern Hollow through another grant package or another project. We already have scoping done for that, so we can move that portion along as a separate project. Just like we could, likely it's probably not going to be as significant of a financial impact to put in speed tables, Ethan. So
right. That's what I was
could
thinking in my
probably
head. Was, yeah, but my bigger question was going to be, if we go the route of, I don't know if we need to do a reapproval, but if we go the route of direction of where you want the speed tables, my next question was going to be, can we put temporaries in now to start looking for a location? And if the answer is yes, can you plow over them? And I know the answer is most likely no.
The answer is no.
Okay.
I wouldn't put temporaries out until spring.
Right, because you can't plow over them. So the only permanent solution from this point on would be to put the tables in before, but that wouldn't be your recommendation. Your recommendation would be to test pilot in the spring.
Optimize it, find out what the best location is, and then proceed with.
So then my question for you, Madam Chair, is, are we looking for a direction of, is the select board committed to, we're putting temporaries in and plan for putting finals in the fall, and are we looking for some sort of direction where we're going to mail a mailer to all the residents in that neighborhood and see how many push back?
I think it would be cleanest, since the temporaries aren't here and alternative 5 talks about one speed table, but says east or west, so it doesn't identify where that placement would be. Scoping that out, is that something that you would do as a matter of course, but would it only be at that one intersection?
I think we would look along the whole length of Tanglewood, because there's an issue along the whole length.
So because of that, and since alternative 5 only mentions one location, anything over and above that, I think it would be good practice for the board to identify anything over and above what's in alternative 5. So if that's community outreach, to let them know, hey, it's coming, the temporary ones to be placed in the spring, and also I think it would be good to express interest in developing an ordinance
Agreed.
before that happens.
Agreed. I just wanted to make sure that we had a lockdown timetable for this situation before we end up 6 years down the road.
Yeah, and if Public Works would typically pick up the temporary ones, November, we're talking about 10 days before
Right.
November 1st.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
So, yeah.
So I just wanted to give that information, not to poke you, but to share that is an issue, that it can't be used with our plow equipment. So.
No, we can't.
Appreciate it. Kendall?
I'll just end with, I think it might not be the best policy to set a precedence without a policy, because I think once you do one speed bump, you're apt to have a lot of residents come in and want a speed bump all over the place. And if you don't have a policy, as stated in the memo, that lines out when, where, what gets done, you could have a lot of requests, and then you're doing things hodgepodge. So I just wanted to make that point again.
Yeah. And I think that was part of, no, it wasn't. There was mention in the memo they're already planning to spend some time formalizing a policy. But if the board would wish to make that recommendation official, I would entertain a motion. If you just want to leave it based on this discussion, that's the board's call. Ethan?
I would motion that the select board make the what we want to call that policy. Is there a name for it? Specific name?
To develop a policy for traffic calming measures.
Traffic calming. I would recommend that the Essex Selectboard make it a high priority to develop a traffic calming measures ordinance.
And I would second that.
Okay. Any mention of temporary?
If I can, I would say and to plan to install temporary, locate, research, locate, and install temporary speed bumps in spring.
In Tanglewood.
In Tanglewood Drive.
If that's part of the original motion, I would not second that.
Why don't we vote on them separately?
We could separate them.
Okay. So the first one is the ordinance. Is there any discussion on that? Andy?
We set a work plan for, and we prioritized goals for the coming year already. Just want to highlight that this is a new high priority being added to the list, which likely means that something else that we had previously asked for gets bumped. Just, I'm not saying for or against, it's just making it clear that one of the ramifications of making those goals and prioritizing them is that you got to have things that come up unexpectedly.
Shannon?
It's always a good reminder. I do think this is just kind of we're doing it because we want to say that it is a priority of the select board, but it is stated in here in the memo that Public Works and the Police Department also plan to spend time this winter already working on this. So I don't feel like it's going to be a huge bump, although I recognize it will now fall on the things we're tracking for Greg.
Yep.
If it passed.
Yes. Thank you. Good.
I think Aaron has.
Yeah.
Aaron?
Are we talking an ordinance or a policy? You mentioned yeah. I think it's better off as a
ordinance.
As a policy versus an ordinance.
Oh, I did say policy.
I think you said policy.
I said ordinance.
I heard ordinance.
Oh, okay.
I wrote
Yeah.
down ordinance.
Policy from the memo. Is that
policy.
policy? Okay.
Sorry.
Any other final discussion? All those in favor of?
Can you clarify
What
the
is the
question?
motion?
I was going to say in favor of.
So my question is that the Town of Essex Select Board make it a high priority for Public Works to work with the PD to make a traffic calming measures policy.
That one. Okay. Is everybody clear on the motion?
Yes.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
Try for the second?
Sure.
So I'd also like to make a motion that the Town of Essex Select Board move forward with the install of temporary, the research, location, and install of temporary speed traffic calming measures on Tanglewood Drive, i.e. speed bumps.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Andy. Discussion?
Just clarification, I meant to say in the spring.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm good with that.
Okay. Motion made, seconded, final discussion. Shannon?
So this will leave time for meetings to take place, for getting feedback, for everything to go in place, but obviously working to resolve this.
Yep. And the policy drafting as well.
Well, the policy is a separate thing, but
Yep.
yes.
But, yeah.
Great.
Yep. Okay. Ready for the question? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Is that what you need?
That works.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks, for coming. With that, we are going to move right along to our discussion with the Development Review Board. Ian, come on up.
I'm going to look for the less squeaky chair.
Excellent choice. So once a year, we typically have the chairs or representatives from each board come in just to board commission, come in just to have a conversation, identify, to include but not limited to any budget asks, ask if there is anything the select board can do to help you, just to further build that awareness and relationship. So I don't know if you had something prepared or.
I was able, thank you for allowing me to speak here today. And I did receive the memo from Greg, town manager, which helped me understand what you might be looking for. I do have each one of the points that was asked for in the memo sort of outlined, but I'm happy to keep this free flowing as well. So whatever works better for you. Since we're the new baby on the boards, then I'm happy to do this however you want. So
Yeah, if you brought points, go for it.
So again, thank you. Development Review Board, as you know, was born on January 1st with our first ever meeting on January 2nd of 2025. So we are just 10 months in as a fully new formed board. So we appreciate the opportunity to have here to chat with the select board about what's going well and what's not. First bullet point that came to us on the memorandum was our work plan for the coming year. Being that we are strictly a development review board, our work plan is to continue reviewing applications as they come to us. So we don't have any formalized plans other than what we get in front of us and what we work with staff. Our plan is to continue to meet on the first Thursday of every month, and we have reserved the third Thursday of every month when workflow requires it. I'll note that we've had 2 meetings per month in 7 of the 10 months that we've been involved. October was scheduled for 2, but we had cancellation for this last one due to a lack of a quorum. So it's been a pretty heavy agenda. And we've enjoyed all the applications we've had in front of us so far. I'll pause there if you have any questions about that. Yes.
I know you said that you don't have plans, but I recall, and you might already pass it on to another board, but you were going to be looking into steep slopes and the buffer as well. Is that through the DRB or is that planning?
That's a planning commission issue, and so I will get to that. That's actually part of it. But so you usurped my agenda, but that's fine. Yes, steep slopes and buffer are 2 areas that we have bumped into quite regularly, and so we have asked for some time to spend before the planning commission, so that as a joint board meeting, we would come to the planning commission. Our full board would come to the planning commission meeting and ask specifically to work on outlining a little bit more defined regulations for us to be able to follow. It's been an issue for us in that it's vague and a challenge to interpret when you have a large crowd that's doing a lot of interpreting in addition to the developer as well as ourselves. Many different opinions, many hands in the kitchen. So we're asking for some refinement on those regulations. So both those issues have been large. So,
do you have an idea of when that might be?
I do. Yep, I do. We have that's actually coming up in November. So we had shot for October, but we couldn't get everybody available. So it's now in November. I believe it's November 16, if I'm not mistaken. So.
Thank you.
One of the other questions was about stipends and how the volunteers feel about them. Are they useful in contributing and participation, or have they incentivized new people to volunteer? So again, we're very new. All 7 of us that applied were appointed, and I don't know that any one of us, I have no firsthand knowledge of anyone, whether they accepting stipend or not. I don't know that the stipend was a driving force in anyone in volunteering to be a part of this board. It wasn't for me. Originally, when I volunteered to join public forums, public boards, I didn't even know there was a stipend until I actually was on a board and they offered it. I do take advantage. I will openly admit I take advantage of the stipend, and that's really only because as chair, I spend a lot more time than originally intended on researching and developing and working through the agenda and making sure I understand the best practices before we have our meetings. So to me, it's just sort of an offset for my family. Other than that, if the stipends went away, it wouldn't stop me from continuing to volunteer. It's not really the purpose of what we do. And I don't know that it would be a major factor for anybody else on the board as well. Budget requests for the fiscal year of 2027. The select board's doing its work on the budget in November, December, and early January. So I will, this is our plug for Town TV, who was here earlier. I believe in talking with staff earlier today that we've already requested an increase for the amount of Town TV that we'd like Town TV to be at every one of our meetings. And we find it extremely helpful with our hybrid meetings to have Town TV available. And they've been terrific enough to help us when we've had to go off-site because of the size of the meetings as well. That's been very important. We don't have technology that carries over well, so I'm sure the owl is transportable, but it's really nice to have Town TV available at either the high school or the middle school or wherever else we have to go to accommodate the size of the meetings we've been having. I also would strongly recommend that we look deeply into the ability to have a better microphone system and audio here in this room. It's been a big challenge that a lot of our meetings that we have, in particular when Town TV is not here with the second speaker, we are frequently told that we can't be heard. And I do know that there is some technology issues a little bit with the owl and microphones that I believe the town already possesses that would be on your lapel. That's been a bit of an issue, but it would be really helpful if the select board would direct IT to maybe look at that a little bit for us. We really could use that. It's almost every meeting that we hear that we can't be heard. And these microphones are also great, but if you don't speak directly into them, they're harder for you to hear. So, so another avenue would be helpful.
I appreciate the display of that while you were speaking.
Exactly. What's working well? I would say that I think we've done a pretty good job in providing opportunities for everyone, including non-residents, to note their feelings regarding all of our applications, and having us be open as we have been and allowing time for folks to speak. I think it's helped to dispel some comments that we're operating in our own vacuum, if you will. We've had some applications that have been approved that some residents were not behind. We've had some that have been declined that some residents were behind. But having those open conversations has been quite helpful. And I believe that we're starting to spend a little bit more time on site visits. So with new applications coming in, we're actually physically going to the sites more frequently than when we first started. And I can't compare that to how the Planning Commission did because I wasn't on the Planning Commission long enough for that. But it has been a point of us to making sure that we'll see how it goes in the depth of the winter. But we've been spending more time doing that, and it actually helps to understand the applications in a greater detail. What can we improve? The quality and completeness of the applications coming before the board review has been a challenge. It was a challenge initially. I think with staff, we've worked on that so that we will perhaps get a little bit more complete applications coming for us. We've had a few opportunities where we've had developers and their engineers kind of come to the board, just kind of throwing stuff out to see what might stick, if you will. And some of that has to do with the newness of the board and how will we be handling these decisions as opposed to how it's been handled in the past. So it's more investigative as to see what direction we're going to be because it's a completely new board with some existing members, however, some completely new members on the board as well. So I think we've kind of narrowed that down a little bit with staff, and the staff has been great in trying to address those concerns. Other than that, what do we want or need to be more effective committee? My first bullet point is see sound and microphones in meeting room. And training with VLCT is planned in November as well, and additional training will be helpful. So as we continue to form the board and form our work plans and how we work within ourselves, it will be helpful to have continued access to places like VLCT and other spots that might offer some additional training for us. And we are working on a visit with the Planning Commission, as I said, in hopes to try to get some a little bit more detail on some of the more challenging zoning areas that we've been running into. that's what I have.
I love that take on the feedback from the folks actually making the decisions
Yep.
back to the folks doing the planning work.
Yes.
So thank you for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Questions from the board? Andy?
You mentioned training from BLCT. What's the topic of the training?
So they've actually provided a variety of stuff for us to be able to take care of on our own prior to when we'll actually have an attorney from VLCT here. I think one of the biggest things we want is the do's and don'ts really of running an actual meeting, and we want to make sure legally, like, what can we do, what can't we do. It's just to ensure that we're staying on top of the proper way to run.
Great, thanks.
Yep.
Any other board questions? Shannon?
I know you mentioned that just as of January 1st, this is a young board. How do you think the split between the Planning Commission and the DRB is going?
That's a great question. As you're well aware, we have people who are on both. I myself am one. As chair of the DRB, I'm also on the Planning Commission. We have a couple of others as well. I do find it, and I've had this conversation with Josh, who is the chair of the Planning Commission. I do find it valuable because we are able to immediately bring back information from either meeting where DRB is questioning about, as an example, steep slope issues. We can note that that there is a work group that's working on steep slopes on the Planning Commission, and vice versa. We can go back to the Planning Commission and state it's not strong enough yet, so we need a little bit more detail. So having that carryover back and forth has been quite helpful. I know that if we operated in completely separate vacuums, it would be a challenge, I think, to understand the repercussions of decisions on both sides, right? Because everything there's give and take to both sides of this. So I think if Planning Commission acted on its own without having an awareness, firsthand awareness of what the DRB is involved with, would be a challenge for DRB to make policy by, or not to approve applications by, and the vice versa. If DRB is having to create decisions based on vague or not highly detailed regulations, it's a challenge. That should go back to them. So it's been helpful, I think, to have members on both. At some point, would it be acceptable to have everybody be completely separate? Perhaps. I don't see it that way. I think at some point there should always be at least one or two that are on both sides. I think it's very important for the conversations for both sides of it.
Okay. With this being one of the few boards and commissions that has carryover, do you think, I know we're going through our handbook and everything else, do you think there's a need to put into policy that you shouldn't be chair of both boards?
I think that's a wise choice. I think that would make sense to me. I'll leave that up to you folks, but I don't see it being the right way to go. You wouldn't want the same chair on multiple boards that have direct relationship with each other to drive the business, if you will, in any one particular direction. So I agree with that.
Are there any other suggestions? I know we're going to be going through the handbook coming up soon. Any other suggestions you want to bring up to us while you're here?
No, I think we've reviewed our handbook and we've sent back our comments, and so beyond that, I agree with the statement about the chair. Beyond that, I think allowing members to cross over. I think it's imperative that you don't have a quorum that's of both. So similar to the chair, you wouldn't want to have 4 members of one committee be also 4 members on another, because again, same idea. So it would have to be less than a quorum.
Andy?
Statutorily, you have the authority to define your own operating procedures.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think it would be appropriate to have your operating procedures stipulate your leadership requirements rather than have it be a general?
As part of the general handbook?
The general handbook, right.
That's a great question. That's certainly something that we would bring up again with VLCT when they come, when we start diving deeper into the proper way to run our meetings. It's definitely something that we could look at. I know that we have looked at our our guidelines, our procedures to follow, to mirror somewhat of majority of what's in the handbook that the town has put together, so that we're on the same page as everybody else. Some things will be different just because of the uniqueness of the board itself, but that's a possibility. It could be in our program.
Not seeing any other hands. I don't see any hands on up. Lorraine, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Ian, for speaking to the issues around the microphones and everything like that. That's really helpful. I really appreciate that. Also appreciate you bringing what's helpful to you guys and what's not helpful. One of my concerns is the staff deciding a consent agenda out of concern for due process. Certainly what I've learned through having a DRB as opposed to having a PC do both is that one of the important things is providing due process for interested parties for being able to appeal decisions. And one of my concerns is when we have the staff making decisions about what goes on a consent agenda, it can it potentially can cause issues around someone being able to properly appeal a case. Can you speak to the consent agenda and where we are with that in terms of due process, and if there is ever going to be an interested party process 2 defined by the DRB? Thanks.
Hi, Lorraine. This is Greg speaking, and not to steal Ian's thunder, but I have been having that conversation with Catherine Sonic, Community Development Director, who I think has been talking to you too, Ian. The DRB is going to be doing away with the consent agenda in the very near future, if not immediately. The consent agenda, the intention was to really kind of take those administrative approvals. A lot of towns, municipalities will give what's called administrative approval to staff for very minor things like, excuse me, like boundary adjustments, simple parcel subdivisions. We've checked with VLCT. The recommendation is that everything go before the DRB as an application. So I think there's going to be separate conversations that maybe Ian can speak to if he's aware about what would constitute an administrative approval that would live with staff and what would be a full application being heard by the Development Review Board.
Yeah,
Great. So when that happens, that would be fleshed out for the public to be able to read and weigh in on as well, or not?
That's a good question. My sense is that it might be something in the operating procedures for the DRB as to what constitutes administrative approval and what does not.
Thanks,
and
Greg.
and those are reviewed and approved publicly. Yes.
Okay.
Correct,
Thanks.
and I think that's one of the agenda items that we have while working with VLCT and during our training.
Right. Any other public comments? Cheryl, go ahead.
Hi, thank you both chairs. Thank you, Ian, for speaking. I have a question about site visits. I was lucky to attend one of the site visits, and my question is around that. What exactly is the purpose of performing a site visit? Are we using that time most efficiently and effectively? Whose eyes are included in viewing the site before the site plans are reviewed? And I'm wondering, are we looking for, are we evaluating what we're seeing during the site visits? Those are my questions. Thank you.
So I'll address those, Lorraine. If I miss a point, then please make sure that you jump back in and remind me what it is. But basically, there are strict rules about how the site visits go, where there's not a lot of conversation between the between board members, where they're strictly to be able to review the site itself and understand what the plans are. The purpose of that is so that we can have firsthand knowledge where, as a poor example, but an example, steep slopes, which comes up almost every single time that we have an application. If there is the note of steep slopes in certain patches or certain areas that we have seen on some of the design, is that steep slope going to significantly affect the project, or is it something that's within the land? It allows us to have the opportunity to review such an area and get firsthand knowledge, as opposed to just looking at a site map. And I do find that to be quite helpful. So when you are visiting with us, you won't see a lot of conversation with us. There may be some clarifying questions, but that's it, because it's not an open public forum for us to be able to discussion. We can't do that until we come back to the table. Did I miss anything from you?
Cheryl, did that answer your question?
Sorry, it took me a while to find my cursor. Yeah, so again, we're trying to, because I know these meetings, DRB meetings, take time away from your families and all. So the site visit, I would want it to be most effective use of your time. So my question is, I would see the site visit as an opportunity to evaluate the site for its perspective for being developed or not. So I'm wondering, is the board educated on what to look for, like as far as criteria or things that would rule it out as not being a site that you'd want to develop on? So that's why I'm getting at with the expert eyes. Maybe does that mean if you can't bring in other people who are experts in evaluating that, are you the DRB to be trained in what to look for? What are signs that this is an ideal place to develop versus not? Thank you.
I don't see that the Development Review Board needs to be trained in ways of environmental or engineering in any way, shape, or form. We have an excellent staff that works with that, so that the engineering process comes from both the developer, who then proposes it over to our staff and our staff of engineers who review everything. I think the purpose of our site visits is not to have firsthand knowledge of, we can't necessarily walk onto a parcel of land and state this is going to have a significant runoff issue because we have that full environmental background or any other background. However, it helps us to understand where the misgivings might be from town staff, or where the positives might be from the applicant. And where those two items that don't necessarily jibe, it gives us an opportunity to review for ourselves before we have the conversations in an open meeting forum. Do I think that we need to be trained in order to be able to do this? No, I don't think so. I think that's why we have we value the quality staff that we have.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you, Cheryl.
Oh, just one last question. As far as liability goes,
If the Development Review Board were to approve of a site and it turns out to be an unwise decision, who would be liable in the end for such a decision? Thanks.
I mean, I can let
Yeah, I was going to say I'm not sure that you would be the person to answer that question.
And wouldn't be the right person, and I can tell you that we're not the end of the process either. Our application approval does not mean that the digging will start the next day. There are a lot of steps that happen before anything actually starts to come to fruition. So our approval is approval of the concept, generally with a fair amount of conditions that have to be met prior to receiving their certificate to be able to, their permit to be able to begin the process. And there are a lot of steps, not even just town involved. In a lot of cases, Act 250 might be involved, or other steps that have to occur. So I don't think that I'm guessing, and this is strictly on mine, but I can't imagine that the DRB itself would be liable. However, if something were to go, I think it would be a failure in the overall process. That's really a question for the town attorney more than me, though.
Thanks, Ian. Irene.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to
Irene.
the Chair of the DRB for mentioning the hearing issue and the lack of microphones at every meeting. The idea of overlap between the PC and the DRB makes me wonder logistically how your boards meet. Do you put on a different hat when you're speaking for one board or the other, the three of you that overlap? I'm just trying to imagine what that's going to look like before it actually happens. Thank you.
Sure, great question. I don't physically have a hat that I switch, but the mindset is definitely there. It's definitely different. When the DRB, we're blessed with the very simple fact that we have applications before us with plans and engineering that goes towards directly what we have on our books currently, and that's the decision that we have to make. And the planning commission hat that when I switch over personally is really about trying to think about long-term effects, and they are two different things. My decisions that I make as a DRB member are strictly based on what's before me and what's allowed on the books currently. And when I'm in the planning commission, it's about the idea of what are the problem areas and what can we fix and what's our long-term goal. So they're two very different items as far as I'm concerned. And I can't speak for the other members, but I would be willing to bet they would feel a similar way.
Thanks, Ian. Ethan.
You got me thinking now.
Sure.
But so theoretically, in that scenario that you just described, though, for any application either in favor or against, wouldn't there be a premeditation that you for or against? Like I said, not yes or no, but there would be maybe not a premeditation, but a notion that you know what the problem is, and then when you go to the planning commission, you're like, well, if we worded this differently, it would be easier to say X or Y. So in my opinion, that's like, I was kind of hearing you out before, but in my mind, I always never wanted to, more than a year of transition. But beside that point, how would you defend that of not bringing any pre-notion to following the book when you're writing the book?
Let me just reiterate that so I make sure that I have your question clear. So you're concerned that if I'm seeing something as a DRB member
that you're against
that I really want to approve but I can't, and I get so excited about that I really want to fix it so that I can go approve. That's not how. Is it possible that could occur? Sure.
I'm not saying you personally either.
But
I'm saying in the position.
As a concept, is it possible? Yeah, it is possible that you could do that. You could. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that somebody couldn't say, like, this is an application I really want to approve. It doesn't fit within a regulation, so I'm going to go back to the regulations and try to tweak it. But I'm one person, and even if there are three of us, we're three on a board of 7. So it's not like we're going to be able to push an agenda. We can go back and forth and say, this is something that we continually bump into as a problem every time that we see an application. So go back to planning commission and say, here's the problem that we're seeing. We need to fix this. And as one of 7, we are able to hopefully come up with a concept that would be a little bit easier for us to be able to go back to the planning commission, go back to DRB and say, here's the regulation now, do with this as it stands, right? So provided that we remain less than a quorum, I don't see that as being a significant factor.
What about with having 3 and only having to convince one person?
If you have one person that you need to convince over to your side as the 3, yeah, is that possible? Sure, but we're all adults. We all have the idea. All have our own ideas. Each one of us comes to this with our own experiences and our own concepts. Do I come into an application, or do I come into a planning commission meeting with the potential of a pre-notion before I sit down after reading the packets and doing the study? Sure, I'm human, right? Am I going to spend my time trying to sway an entire planning commission board because I want to see more stuff approved or less stuff approved?
Yeah.
Is it possible? It is possible.
Right.
So, and that's something for you as a select board to outline, I think, if you are concerned that that's a possibility. If there were only 2 people that crossed over, it would only take 2 to convince to move to your side. So, I mean, that it's always going to be a possibility. You're right. If it were 0 and 0 for crossover, there wouldn't be any of that. I don't know that it would be a highly functional system, however.
Lose the communication. You would lose.
Communication gets lost, or would require monthly visits, I think, from both parties to be able to keep things flowing in an appropriate way.
And I'm not saying
in both cases, both DRB and especially in the Planning Commission, we're still well behind.
Right.
I mean, the Planning Commission is while did a lot of planning, also did a lot of development review, and so there are a lot of items on the Planning Commission side that aren't even up for applications. It's really about trying to catch up with some of the stuff that people have been asking for a while.
Right.
So,
backlog.
Perfect. I appreciate your feedback, and I'm not for or against. I just kind of wanted to play the scenarios and see somebody in the experience of it.
I think it's a great, fair question, and you're asking it the right way. So I totally get it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Any other questions from the board? Ian, thank you for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next discussion is with the Energy Committee.
Hi, good evening. Will Dodge. I'm the chair of the Energy Committee, and I have Natalie Braun, who's one of the committee members with me. So thank you for inviting us to come tonight. I'm going to kind of go through some of the same questions, but of course, if you want to interrupt me, but I thought sort of at the top of that list is, what is your work plan for 2026? Our work plan exists in terms of a discussion that is recorded in the minutes, but that has not been solidified in what looks like a real work plan yet. So that's what we haven't shown you. But included among those items for 26, I think we want to work on the Energy Committee charter, which is something that we started and kind of got stopped midstream, to make it a little broader than it is and propose some recommendations to you. We want to work on the energy plan, which was an item that was in the CCRPC package that you had earlier. To tell you about that, like, why is that taking so long? That was supposed to happen this year. Well, there's a lot of things in the data that we got that's looks like good data, but it's hard to understand. And so part of our goal is to make it a little more understandable, so that instead of just saying, Essex needs 11,506 megawatt hours, right? We want to try to translate that into something that people can get their heads around a little better onto different dates. So in addition to working on the energy plan, we're going to continue our tradition of doing info tables, and that includes a town meeting day. We have the idea there of trying to potentially involve folks from the Vermont Energy Education group that has like toys and things that get people excited about energy and climate change generally at that town meeting, since it's a good locale, but also to continue tabling with other energy committees from Chittenden County at the Champlain Valley Fair. This year we think we had about 740 contacts with people over the course of a week. So that's all talking with people, providing information on
470.
Oh, I said 470. I flipped the number.
I do like.
I can be ambitious.
That flip, but yes. It's
470.
480. Yeah.
Thank you, Natalie. That's great. But it was a really good event. We felt like we got some real traction this year, and that we're getting better at it each year. Also tabling at Community Day and at other events that we have more locally. We feel like a place that we've fallen short is on our kind of advocacy on the EV side. So advocating and providing more information to you folks and to the Planning Commission about EV charging infrastructure, but also just general promotion of EVs. One of the things that I noticed in the data package that CCRP provides is that they said that in 2023, Essex had a total of 84 either all-electric or plug-in hybrids. That number seems very low to me. So one of the things I want to try to figure out is why do those numbers appear to be wrong? And it says that that amounts to 0.6% of Essex total vehicles. But I think all of us can eyeball a parking lot and say, well, just the Teslas alone, we must be closer to maybe 5%, but maybe not the 10% that we think nationwide electric vehicles have hit in terms of the market. So we want to spend some more time on that. We want to look at exploring and promoting balcony solar options, which are basically the plug-in solar panels to help people both produce energy and save energy at the same time. And we want to continue our role in advising, or at least looking at being part of the discussions over the the Upper Main Street project, because that was something that we spent a lot of time on last year, and we really want to keep our eye on and keep advocating for and seeing if we can be useful. And in that vein, in terms of funding priorities, you know, we traditionally haven't asked for very much for that, but the one item that came up at our last meeting, and that I think Sean McNamara is looking into, is about looking for a consultant on the issue of a thermal energy network and trying to drive down or ultimately get a geothermal cost estimate that may involve creating a network as opposed to just going building by building, unit by unit, and potentially what those savings would look like over the long term. So that gives you some idea of some of the basics. I would say we've provided very few comments on the handbook. We had good discussions about it. I think those hopefully made it their way over to Greg. I think I forwarded them to Tammy. I think the things that we would love to have would be more time on that Otter AI, because basically the first 30 minutes, I think it's the first 30 minutes of our meetings get recorded and therefore transcribed, but then the light goes off and the rest of it we're kind of scrambling. But it works really well when we're using it for the first, at least for the first part of our meetings. I'm just gonna see if there's anything else that you think we should.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we're learning this the hard way.
Because I do usually the brief minutes. That's deeply troubling.
But Natalie is our backup, so we
That's
have had
troubling to me.
we've had
Wow.
meetings.
Okay, yeah, that needs to go. It has to go well beyond 30 minutes. Okay.
Yeah. What does the board need to become a more effective committee? I think we could use, honestly, I think we could use one more member because we still have a vacancy. And I think, and this is not disparaging to anyone, present company included, but we could use like a youth representative. I noticed in the handbook, it said that a resident of Essex at 16 years old could be on a committee. And I was thinking, wow, that would be fabulous if we could get a 16-year-old or somebody from high school or in college, just because I think that they're going to be more adept at communication. And I think that's a place where we've fallen a little short over the past couple of years. We've had successes on certain things, but we can always do a lot better at trying to kind of get the word out.
Board questions? Shannon.
Thank you both for coming tonight. I really appreciate all that you're doing, and I was going through your minutes and different things before I came to the meeting, and it's great work you're doing. Two questions I had. I know you mentioned, well, one technical question. You'd said town meeting day you're going to have a booth or a table and different things. Is that actually at the polls, or are you going to have something in the night before at the soup dinner?
I'm sorry, you're right. It's usually at the soup dinner that we've done it, right, Natalie?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know other organizations do tabling stuff at, as voters comes in. I think both, or at least the soup night would be great. So my second question is, you mentioned vacancies, you mentioned the excitement about a youth member. What are you doing to attract that or get out there and let people know that's available?
To be honest, I'd say thinking about it and coming here to at least put that out there. But it's something that I think we ought to probably put into our work plan.
Well, we did, I know we had the vacancy in Front Porch Forum at one time, and I think we send that out again. But the idea of a more youthful member is a grand one, and I think the FPF posting would need to be rewritten in that way, and I think it's a grand idea. So yes, FPF once or twice maybe, and needs to go again.
And in fairness, Natalie has done a great job, at least in the time that I've been on the committee, bringing in folks who are in high school who are involved with some outside organizations who have interest
as interns, short-term interns.
It's short-term interns, which is great, but it's all the more reason why I think if we could get somebody permanently there, and especially who's either great at communications or good at graphic design or things that, frankly, the upper generations are not quite as good at, I think that would help us out a lot.
I think it's great. I also think if you could reach out to the science department or something. I know that Steve Dowd, who's on the Conservation Trails, has great connections with the high school. So I think that if a department head or a teacher heard about this opportunity for a resident of Essex, they'd probably say, hey, here's 6 students that are possible. My last question is, and I know it was going through, I think it was the last time it was on your agenda was April or March. What is any updates on the Unsworth projects?
Yeah. So thank you for that question. It's a good question. We have not given up on it, and it will still be in our work plan. I think that we put it a little bit down on the agenda item because part of what we need to do. So a couple of things happened there. One is that as you may have heard, the incentives for certain types of solar development are not quite as advantageous as they were at the beginning of the year.
For residential solar, but for commercial or municipality solar, that's still in place.
Well, but a lot of those, like the federal incentive is basically going away, and so you'd need to have the project in the ground. And looking at the complexities on this particular parcel, I think that may be overly ambitious.
Okay.
The other thing that honestly we just need more time to get our heads around is the steps of first figuring out how we RFP for a consultant to advise, and then once we do that, have that consultant help with our RFP. So there's just multiple steps, and I think one of the things that we need to do in our work plan is just map out all of the things that we need to actually do to make that work. So we have not given up on it. We've just put it aside, I think, because we were making some of the outreach, some of the other work that we were doing more of a priority.
Great. Full disclosure, I work for a solar company, Green Mountain Solar. I'm not plugging this as a person or to get the business, but I do know that certain towns such as Charlotte and Groton are actively looking into this for the next 2 years before that incentive does go away.
Before the incentive goes away? Yeah.
Andy.
You mentioned the thermal energy network. Are you talking about for Upper Main Street or just in more general?
I would say Upper Main Street, although at least when we had the presentation that Catherine Sonic and Ann Janda from CCRPC attended, there's at least the prospect that you could build a network that would both serve new buildings but also some existing buildings, like, say, on the other side of Route 15. So I think one way or the other, we need somebody with the expertise to advise on that.
Okay. And then, can I ask another one? Our town plan on page 17, general policy 7S2 talks about citing development or commercial scale ground-mounted solar only in commercial and industrial zoned areas. Have you considered that and how you could move forward with the Unsworth property?
It says commercial and industrial?
Yep.
I feel like elsewhere in the town plan, there's stuff that says something different.
We have
I think there might be
conflicting goals in our.
So, the legal way around that would be to get the energy plan fixed so that we can say, notwithstanding what the town plan says, these are some of the areas that are okay. I think the main constraint that we had focused, or that is focused on in the draft energy plan, which of course is the same as the energy plan when we had Essex and Essex Junction, is to stay out of the scenic overlay. And that's, I think, we've all been in agreement on that. And when we spoke about this with the planning commission, we were in agreement about that. But I don't remember that provision that you're focusing
Page
on.
17. I think.
Page 17.
Yeah.
Okay.
Colonel Page doesn't meet that.
Yeah, that's good. That's at least not yet. Maybe not anytime soon.
Any other questions from the board? Are there any public comment questions?
I was just gonna thank Natalie. I love seeing her at all of the community events, and she gives me all her pamphlets, and usually she has a sweet treat for you too.
Yep,
So
yep. And I enjoy seeing you as well and your family.
Lorraine, go ahead.
I love, Ethan, that Natalie's food motivated you. That's good. That's cute. Right. One thought for Will was that in terms of Shannon's suggestion is, I don't know if you're connected to the CTE at all, but I think it's Jim Dermeyer who runs the STEM part, like the engineering part. Might want to have some kind of liaison or someone connection to those programs, because often the students are trying to build their resume as well when they're applying to college.
Yeah, no, we agree.
And what was the name? Steve. It's not Steve Dowd.
Steve Dowd was.
No, it's Jim Dermeyer. Jim Dermeyer is in the engineering. I think he runs the engineering part. But whoever's there, I think it just would be a great connection for a couple of our commissions and boards.
It's a great idea.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Lorraine.
Thank you, Lorraine. Not seeing any other hands. Is there anything else from the board? Will, Natalie, thank you for being here.
thanks again.
Thank you all.
very much.
Thanks very much. Good luck.
And next we have our representative from the Cemetery Commission.
I'm Joe Teeger. I'm the chair of the Cemetery Commission, and I guess I have a laundry list like all others did about things that you asked to talk about. So if you want me to go down the list, or if you all have some burning questions you'd like to start me with. Okay, I'll go down the list. Okay. All right, so the work plan. Essentially, the cemetery work plan is pretty close to the same every year. We just want to make sure that the tree trimming, the mowing, road maintenance gets done. We want to make sure that all the gravestones in both MVC and the Essex Common Burial Ground gets repaired. As you know, in the or maybe you don't know, but in the regulation it says that the grave owners are supposed to take care of their plot or their gravestones and things like that. But obviously in the Common Burial Ground, those people aren't around anymore, those families to take care of stones, so we have to find a way. And that's also true on some in the Mountain View Cemetery, which is active. So we're involved with that. We're involved with stone cleaning in general. We're also involved with recognition of veterans' graves with flags and flag markers. And we're also coming up, our main push is to move to complete adherence to regulations about how plots can be, I'll say, adorned with items like stones, gadgets, solar lights, bushes, whatever. If you went out to MVC today or tomorrow, you could kind of get a view as to how some plots have a lot of different things on them. And some of these things, you might say, well, why not just, what makes a difference? Makes a lot of difference in terms of mowing, maintaining, weed eating, that sort of thing. And so we are in the process of trying to bring this up to speed. Interesting enough, I was looking at the minutes of the Cemetery Commission in 2018, and this problem was discussed then also. And so it hasn't gotten very far. So, so we're going to tackle it and see how far we can get with it. So in terms of stipends, I personally don't believe they make any difference, at least in our committee. I think everybody would be there with or without a stipend. So, I mean, I enjoy getting it in the mail. The check is kind of cool to go down and cash the check, and have some money in your pocket. But I don't really, I didn't get on the commission to get the $50 stipend. So, for whatever that's worth to you, there you go. In terms of, it says budget request for fiscal 27, our budget that we get from the, as part of the select board budget is $6,000 right now. We're just asking for another 300 just to kind of keep up with inflation. And I don't know if you have a copy of our work plan, but I can leave one with you if you don't. Does the chair have a copy of our work plan?
I don't think so. I don't recall whether it was in the packet.
It was not in the
No.
May I give it to you then?
Sure. Happy to accept it.
Work plan with a budget request.
Thank you. Can we scan this in and email it out?
So we haven't worked, with a lot of money, but we have, a lot of volunteer help and things like that. It's kind of really the nature of the beast right now. In terms of what's working well on the board, I think this is the goodwill of all the board members who come in every time. We get along with each other. We go out and visit the cemeteries, and we just try to keep our eye open for how we can make the cemeteries more aesthetically pleasing and more accessible to people in the community. So that's working pretty well. So I don't think much could be improved at this time. Specifically, maybe what could be improved and what does the board need to be a better committee might be combined into one thing. And one thing that we could use, it would be to have an easy to read financial report for each of our meetings. I don't have a report like that every meeting. I request numbers on different accounts and this and that, but I certainly would like to see any encumbrances. I'd like to see expenses. I'd like to see any revenue coming in, because we do have revenue that comes in from plot purchases. We have revenue that comes in from interest on our trustee account, and we then have expenses for this and that, and trying to then match it up with how we go about the business of trimming trees, et cetera, and that kind of stuff is kind of complicated each time. So I'd be willing to work with anybody who would help me with that. I'm not maligning staff or anything about that. I just right now don't have a report that could be helpful to me. That is helpful to me. As I said last year, something to make us more effective would be is if select board members would go to the cemeteries, look at those, and come back with ideas as to what they think ought to be different about the cemeteries. I look at it almost 2 or 3 times a week, and most of the time I think it looks pretty good. But maybe if you walk out there and you say, well, nice Joe, but this looks not very good or something like that. So it would be nice to have feedback just about what do you think is going on, especially if you hear anything from the community or anything like that as to how we can do things differently. Then another thing that could be helpful would be we as a group, we're in charge of different activities in the cemeteries, trimming trees and this and that and whatever. It would be really helpful if the town would take over the job of 2 jobs. One would be simply trimming trees, not taking them down, that's a different matter, but trimming trees, not bushes, but trees that hang over the roads in the cemeteries. I'm assuming whoever, or the Park and Rec, they do the mowing. I assume they could do that also. I'm not saying they don't do their job well. I'm just saying they don't do that right now. So if they took that over, that would be helpful. And also if it's the Public Works Office, if someone would take over the job of going through the cemetery, MVC, and just filling potholes once a year with gravel, that would be better than having me as a cemetery chair trying to think about every year going out and getting 3 bids to get potholes filled. It just doesn't make any sense. So anyway, those things would be helpful. And then another thing that's not part of being helpful, but it's something that we have talked about and you'll probably be getting a letter about, and that is, we think as you work on the total town plan, it would be good to conserve space in that plan, some green space for the future, let's say for the next, in the next 70 or 80, 90 years, give or take a few years, that you could turn that into a new cemetery. Right now we have plenty of space. It's not a big issue, but I'm thinking 4, 5, 6 decades down the road, space could be used up. And then where are you going to go with a cemetery? So if that's part of the town plan, where maybe you make a park for a while, and then at least 60 or 70 years from now, you can decide whether you want that park to be a cemetery or not. Something to think about. Okay. Okay. I haven't got much more than that. Does anybody have any particular questions?
Shannon.
Sure.
Building off your last comments, I was just curious, how full are we?
How full.
And what is the rate that we see new plots being filled each year?
We only sell about, I was just looking at that, 7, 8 plots a year. Not very many. And the same way with burials. We're talking about an MVC. In common burial ground, it's not active, so there's nothing coming or going there.
Mm-hmm.
But MVC, it's starting, 6 or 7 a year are purchased. And we have a brand new section that's opened up. It's been plotted out. And, at this rate, I would say, it's going to take, again, 70, 80 years to fill it. I don't know how fast something will change in the future, but it's not a burning issue. I just see it being an issue when the time comes. So,
certainly. Backing up to a previous comment of yours about the trees and different things, and recognizing that our community has a lot of ash trees, and the emerald ash borer could be coming. We could be losing a lot of trees. Do you foresee that? I don't know the makeup of the trees in your properties. Is there a lot of ash in those
well,
areas?
we already have a project right now to in the coming year to remove about 13 or 14 maple trees in MVC. Right now, because of a fungus that's growing on those, like these 150-year-old maple trees. So we have a finance way to do that from our trustee fund, and I think the town is going to, Jim Booker told me, is going to kick in some cash too to get that done this year. That's about a $30,000 job, but the other piece I was talking about was just simply trimming the existing trees that hang over the different lanes or avenues and streets in the NVC. When you try to drive cars through them, the limbs are hanging down, etc. Yeah.
Sure.
So.
And just on your last comment, is there any place in town that you would say, hey, this looks like a great future spot for a cemetery? If we think about
do I have one?
Long term.
No, we just talked about it as a group, knowing that there was a plan being developed. I don't have a spot laid out for that now, or that would work for that. Not at all.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ethan.
I just had wanted to thank you for your hard work and the great update. But the only question I had was I can't remember exactly what the final outcome was, but are we still good with the VFW for the flag donations?
Yeah, that's a really bright spot. We have about 250 or so veterans' graves in both graveyards combined, and in the last couple of years, the VFW has donated then the flag holders that did not exist before. They were before, just flags were stuck in the ground. But they purchased those for us, and they purchased then all the flags each year. So what we do, so right now we have the flag holders that are available in the already in the ground, and they don't wear out particularly fast. They don't look all that great from one year to the next. We'll see how long they last. But anyway, you asked me the question. They donate all of that, so it's been all free.
Awesome.
And, it's just been our labor as a commission to make sure that all the graves have been identified and then marked. And we try to do that a few weeks before Memorial Day.
Awesome.
And then the flags are up above ground. They seem to don't succumb to the mowers and the weed whackers going by because of the flag holders.
Keeps them up.
And so it's I think it's very attractive personally. You know, if you haven't been out there, probably now is not the greatest time in the world because the flags now have been out there all summer and they're starting to kind of bend over. But in around Memorial Day, they look pretty cool. And you know, kind of especially when it's all green and new flags, because we put brand new flags every year.
Yeah. Awesome. I just want to make sure that was you had given us that a couple years ago. They I think it was 2 years ago now. It's been 2 years that's been going on, and
yeah,
I just want to make sure that was still.
It's really been a great
good.
relationship.
Awesome.
I mean,
Great.
I assume they will do it again too. I always write them a letter every year. I have been writing them a letter, and they've always agreed to do it.
Awesome.
If they said no, I don't know what we do. We guess we'd do something.
Yeah.
Find some way to make it work.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any other board questions? Is there any public comment? Irene, sorry.
No public comment about the cemetery?
Get one.
I'll
Ms. Renner, you
jump
have a
in.
public comment about
Hi,
the
Irene
cemetery?
Renner. Green burials are becoming the rage, and I just wondered if you could be looking into a place that already exists, like a park, like Indian Brook Reservoir, and see if there's a place that green burials could happen, and then we could get on the map for those and
Well,
look like
you know,
a four-living town, as we are.
We have discussed green burials as a group a little bit, but we've been told, I can't verify this because I didn't do the research or anything, that the soil at MVC is not conducive to a green burial. And so that might be something that we could look into if we're talking about a new town plan, about how we might do something like that. So I guess the answer is that we haven't done a whole lot of it. I will say also too is that all of this issues with how many graves are purchased every year is all being kind of changed by the people's attitudes about what they want to have for burials. There's a lot of cremations now. And you can have up to 4 different cremations in one particular plot. So people are putting, one plot amount of people. Some people aren't using, marking their graves at all anymore. They're throwing their ashes off of, Mount Philo or something. And so anyway, bottom line is it's hard to be able to predict what will happen in terms of what the needs would be for the graveyard in the future. But who knows? Maybe it'll boil down to very little, the way people operate. Okay.
All right.
Okie dokie.
Thank you.
Cheryl, go ahead. There's one question
more?
online.
Okay.
Just 2 really quick questions.
You're talking about factors that will either increase or decrease the number of graves purchased. I was wondering, did you see an uptick in grave purchases during COVID? And the second question I had was, are you taking into account aging demographics of Vermonters and making projections based on that? Thank you.
The answer to the first question, I did not see any difference during the COVID years. I haven't been on the commission. I've only been on the commission 4 years, so I can't really give you a good picture of that. And was the question about taking into consideration the demographics? Is that people getting
Aging
older? Is that what the
population.
question was, and whether that will make a difference? If that is the question, I would just simply say is that we just watch how many grave purchases are made each year, and there's not very many right now. So it's not like there's a wave that we are worried about. But that is something to think about. But I guess the answer to your question is no. We haven't thought about it as a group.
Okay. Great. I don't see any other hands online. I don't see any hands in the room. I don't see anybody with their hands up at the table. So, Joe, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for what you do.
Thank you.
And with that, we will move on to business item G, consider approval of resolution affirming commitment to fairness, freedom, and community safety. I will note that in the packet, there was the red line version. Last time there was some conversation about Shannon and I were drafting it together, but with, feedback, we didn't want to have a walking meeting. I did send Shannon an email. He verified that his access to the draft was completely cut before I started making edits to it. So I did just want to make note of that specifically. So based on the feedback that I got from board members, the red line was in your packet. So let's see here. Yeah, I did add in whether those individuals are residents or visitors to our community. The suggestion was to add in rule of law after free speech due process. And then a bit about the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council's fair and impartial policing policy that the Essex Police Department has adopted, and also added in those applicable items in the actual numbered resolution below. So I'll turn it over to the board for any questions, comments, or if staff, staff, you didn't even see this until I sent you the red line copy, so. Ethan.
I just had a quick question about the there's not the red line paragraph about the criminal justice training, and then in that, my question is that a quote from? Is that a quote?
That is not a quote.
Okay, and then thank you for that answer.
Yep.
And then my part that I would ask for clarification is that where this information was found from. I know it says it disallows racial profiling and limits the Essex Police Department from assisting. Doesn't that prevent it also from interfering?
So I did, Chief Hogue gave some input on this. The fair and impartial policing policy is found on our website.
Mm-hmm.
It is the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Council. They have a model policy. And I did ask that question. He did indicate that the fair and impartial policing policy does not completely prevent EPD from interacting with immigration enforcement. It does prohibit our enforcement of or participation in the enforcement of civil immigration law, and permits limited interaction with federal agents when they possess a criminal warrant. And there were two federal statutes that indicated that officials may not prevent or restrict their employees from communicating with authorities regarding citizenship or immigration status. The policy, the fair and impartial policing policy, recognizes this and allows for limited interactions in criminal enforcement when a warrant has been issued by a judge.
Okay. So we're referring to their policy as a look to.
Correct.
Okay, got it.
Correct.
Just wanted to make sure that if it was a quote, that it had the.
Yeah, it wasn't a
the
quote,
backstory.
but it just
Perfect.
references kind of like that's a lot to get into a
agree.
resolution.
You don't need it to be pages.
Yep.
That was my only question.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay, at this point, I will turn it over to public comment on the draft that was in the packet.
Hi, I'm Brian Clifford. I live on Tanglewood Drive. I support this resolution, and I also support the inclusion of, protections for immigrants in this. I know that in the last meeting there was some discussion around this, and I just want to kind of back up what our neighbor Julian Ugeti said about the Constitution protecting immigrant rights, regardless of whether or not they're documented. The Fifth Amendment explicitly protects the right of quote-unquote any person living inside the U.S. It's like very broad, inclusive language. It's similar to how the Town of Essex Declaration of Inclusion states all residents, visitors, employees, and more. The 14th Amendment also uses this any person language in the Equal Protection Clause. The Supreme Court has upheld that any person really does include undocumented immigrants in the following decisions: 1886's Yick Wo v. Hopkins, 1982's Plyler v. Doe, 2001's Zadvitas v. Davis. Despite the president's efforts to try to undermine equal protection, the Supreme Court case law through executive orders executive orders are not law and also are not binding on the judiciary. So for better or worse, equal protection for undocumented immigrants has been the law of the land for a long time, even if it always hasn't been enforced. In my opinion, it's not being enforced well enough right now, which is why you see so many people out in the street protesting and why this resolution is important. I think the resolution is important because Lamell Lumber fired migrant workers last winter for exercising free speech and participating in a day without an immigrant. I obviously don't think that this resolution would have stopped them from doing that, but I think that incident happening underscores the shortcomings of the town's Declaration of Inclusion and proves that more action is needed to protect everyone's rights. And just in general, I just don't think that this is particularly partisan resolution that we're looking at here. Like, it'll protect people waving rainbow flags at the Five Corners the same as it will protect people waving Trump flags outside the Grange Hall. So I hope we can kind of move forward with this and get it done. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment?
My name is Sue Getty. I live on Basha Drive. The whole reason we're doing this is because I brought this issue up to y'all to be considered. I definitely think that this is important. I support the resolution, even though I'm not necessarily happy about the language in it and the lack of teeth, I guess. But I still do support this, and I hope that you'll vote to adopt it. And I also hope that we still continue to assess the situation as things escalate in this country, because I think you're all aware that they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. I'm not seeing any hands up online. No others in the room, so I'll bring it back to the board. What's your pleasure? Andy?
I make the motion that the Select Board approve a resolution affirming commitment to fairness, freedom, and community safety.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Shannon. One note, this will be, if approved, this will be placed on the appropriate letterhead and with signatures and such. Yeah, without the red lines.
Yes,
Just to
for
make that
final.
clear.
Are we going to do a approval and then final passage when we read it and sign it?
Not for a resolution, no.
So somebody read it tonight as is?
What's that? Yeah, we can, if it,
Clerk?
I'll read it into the record.
yeah, we can read it into the record. Let's see if it passes first.
I was just clarifying.
Yep, nope,
discussion.
good point. So we have a motion, we have a second to approve the resolution. Final discussion. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Mr. Clerk, would you like to read it into?
I'd be glad to. Town of Essex Select Board Resolution affirming commitment to fairness, freedom, and community safety. Whereas the people of Essex, Vermont believe in the dignity, safety, and worth of every individual in our community, whether those individuals are residents or visitors to our community. And whereas acts of discrimination, racial targeting, and political violence, whether by individuals, groups, or institutions, undermine the values of justice and fairness that form the foundation of a free and democratic society. And whereas our community has a long tradition of neighborliness, civic responsibility, and respect for diverse views. And whereas the Select Board recognizes that healthy democracy depends on free speech, due process, rule of law, and the protection of personal freedoms for all, regardless of race, background, or political belief. And whereas we acknowledge that public safety and trust are best served when all community members feel secure, respected, and empowered to participate in civic life without fear of intimidation or violence. And whereas the Vermont Criminal Justice Training Commission's model fair and impartial policing policy, as adopted by the Essex Police Department, disallows racial profiling and limits the Essex Police Department from assisting with federal immigration enforcement activities. And whereas the Declaration of Inclusion, adopted by the Select Board on June 26, 2023, commits to, quote, fostering an inclusive and welcoming place for all residents, end quote, and welcoming, quote, all people regardless of ethnicity, color, religion, national origin, gender, identity, or sexual expression, age, or physical and or mental capacities, end quote. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Town of Essex Select Board, 1, stands firmly against discrimination in all forms, including racial targeting and political violence. 2, reaffirms our commitment to the principles of free speech, due process, rule of law, and personal freedom as core to both Vermont values and American democracy. 3, encourages all residents, organizations, and institutions to engage with one another respectfully and constructively, even when disagreements arise. 4, commits to fostering a safe and welcoming community where every individual has the opportunity to thrive without fear of prejudice, harassment, or harm. This pertains to residents and visitors to our community. 5, affirms our commitment to the Vermont Criminal Justice Council's model fair and impartial policing policy as adopted by the Essex Police Department for the Town of Essex. 6, be it further resolved that this resolution shall be entered into the official minutes of the Select Board and shared publicly through the town's communication channels to affirm our community's shared values. Adopted by the Town of Essex Select Board this 20th day of October 2025.
Thank you, Shannon. Our next item, discussion and potential action about select board member participating in the Health and Human Services Review Committee. There was a memo in the packet identifying that former board member Dawn Hill Fleury has been serving in this role. This is for the board to decide whether a select board member should participate on the review committee. Shannon.
I took Don's seat, so if no one else would like it, I'd be glad to step up and fill this.
So moved.
Andy?
No, I was just gonna say that the manager appoints members to this, so we don't need a motion to do this. It's totally the manager's appointment to this committee.
It is. I wanted to bring it to all of you to see if there was interest, if there were multiple people interested, and just to get your feedback. But Andy's correct. It's a committee that is appointed by the manager. So would be happy to appoint Shannon, but if there's other interest, I'd be happy to.
I wanted to come to this meeting and say I'd be
too.
glad to if someone else obviously wants to do it and they've been waiting in the wings for Don to not do it. I don't want to step on your toes.
So I've done it in the past. Dawn asked me if she could take it on, so I ceded it to her, and I'm happy to let it follow the chain.
And thank you for the clarification on the appointment.
I have a procedural question.
Yes.
Are there other committees where a select board member serves on it? And I'm just wondering why a select board member is appointed to serve on this particular committee as opposed to not other committees.
I think because this is a human services review committee that's primarily staff manager appointed, and not a full committee of the select board. At least that's my understanding. Andy may have.
Right, and so our charter says that the manager sets the budget, and so the manager has the responsibility of defining this piece of the budget as well. And so it's always been viewed that it's the manager's process to decide, to make a proposal for where the funds, how the funds should be allocated. The manager has in the past chosen to have a select board member on that committee, along with a lot of other folks on his staff, his or her. And so that's the, it's not a select board committee, it's a manager's committee.
Okay.
And I assume since Greg put this in the memo in the packet that he would like to have a select board member gather interest.
And all decisions are made publicly, in this room.
Yep.
Okay. I just wondered, it seemed unusual that this committee wanted a select board member on it.
Yeah. No, good question. Andy.
Little more history back in time, it was just the manager. And the biggest criteria was who did we give money to last year? And so this process was actually the reason that I became a select board member, was to have it be a more open, more thoughtful process. And so,
And kudos to that. It has evolved into a whole scoring system, and it's pretty well thought out. And I know they're always looking for process improvements and how they can do better. So kudos to Greg and the staff involved and select board members who have participated in the past. Shannon.
I was very impressed with the presentation many months ago that they actually went through in the whole list of all the organizations and the levels of funding and peppering. I think, Karen, you might have been involved with answering questions, but sounds like a very thorough process.
Okay. So I heard that Shannon is interested. I don't think that, do we need to make a recommendation to you? Is that what the action is, or are you good?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks, Shannon.
I'm just saying as like double backup that I was also thinking in my head before I knew that he wanted to do it, because I just learned that. But my question was going to be tonight was if we needed to back up or if something happened with Shannon or whatever. But my question was going to be, I say every year when we do the human service funding that I utilize state funds through ANDOT's Vermont Farm to Table program. So I was wondering, although I vote to approve human funding, because I don't believe that that's a conflict of interest, I was wondering if it would be appropriate to even be involved in that because of that. But I feel the same way. But I wanted to hear from, and it sounds like it's a non-issue, but I don't know if there's a alternate to this position, but I wanted to bring it up.
Appreciate it. Everybody good? Okay. Our last item is for executive session, so I'm going to skip ahead to the reading file, board member comments, meeting schedule, investment update. Anybody have any comments?
I always have a comment for Dan the man. Good job, Dan. I look back on some of the Essex Town reports and the paltry amount of interest that the town used to get when they had double the money compared to what they're getting for interest now. Dan's the man.
Yep.
And his staff, of course, everybody, but
Yep.
great job.
Well, in community too, this was a topic that was raised by the community as well, for higher interest rates. So, yeah, win all around. So seeing no other, yeah, Shannon.
Oh.
Sorry, go Andy.
No, I
Shit.
okay.
I'm just grateful there's rain. It's been too long without
Yeah.
rain, so I know a bunch of other residents, myself included, are on a well. It's nice to hear the drips behind us.
Yes. Andy.
As I mentioned earlier, I did attend the Agency of Natural Resources Municipal Day. It was, I think, very worthwhile. I shared all my comments or stuff that I learned with Greg and Karen and Tracy, and shared some of it, I guess, earlier in the meeting. So encourage anybody else to attend next year if you're interested. Also, their next week is the on Thursday night, the 30th, is the select board meetup. Tracy, you've said that you're not available.
Yes,
to
thank you
attend.
for that reminder. I will not be available, so it's really informative, and if folks can go, I assume you're going to be.
So
going?
I'm interested in going, but if there's two others that do want to go, I would certainly step aside.
I would love to, but I can't. It's the trick-or-treating night at the U-Mall where we're going to that. So.
I think the town is best served if you.
Where is it?
It's at the CCRPC offices in Winooski on Canal Street, which is kind of behind the Woolen Mill Apartments. It's a beautiful building.
That's Thursday night?
Thursday night.
2 people can go?
Yeah.
I'll text you about it.
Okay.
I don't know what my schedule's like, but
We'll sort it out, and
nobody else
I
is
at least,
interested.
I at least will go, and
yeah. I had fun at the annual meeting.
Yep. Great. Yeah, thanks for
Yeah.
covering
I learned
that.
a lot. So.
Yep. Awesome. All right, so with nothing else on reading file, do we have executive session motion ready to go?
I got 'em.
Andy?
I make the motion that the select board make the specific finding that general public knowledge of pending or probable civil litigation or prosecution to which the public body is or may be a party would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you. Andy, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0.
I make the motion that the select board enter into executive session to discuss pending and probable civil litigation or prosecution to which the public body is or may be a party pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1E to include the town manager and deputy town manager.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. We'll just go with
Sorry.
you.
I just
You got the second motion too. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. We are in executive. We will not be coming. We will only be coming back to adjourn. So there will be no action other than that following.